Hello, this is Lisalee and welcome to my channel. So today's pick a card reading. We are going to meet your shadow. We're going to do some shadow work together. I'm filming this like pick the card portion after I already did the reading, because it's sort of, this reading evolved of its own kind of volition. So the preamble is coming up in just a moment if you want to listen for it. Otherwise, timestamps are below. But pile number one, we're going to be using the 11 figurine. Pile number two, this is like a bell, but it reminds me of the goddess Melissa. And pile number three, we have the zebra. So go ahead and we're gonna go right over to the explanation on this reading right now. And if you already like have a pile that very much like pulled you in, timestamps are below. Hello, this is Lisalee and welcome to my channel. So today we're doing a reading with the concept of meeting your shadow. We're doing a shadow work reading, and in a sense, that's a little bit like going to the dentist. It's like, why would you sit for that? But the prompting that I got from Spirit today, I had done a TikTok and it kind of brought up this notion of shadow work. And I realized that not everyone understands the power of doing shadow work intentionally. And it's almost like a situation of like pain now or pain later, like intentionally choosing to sort of look at something where, you know, things that your conscious mind usually would refuse to acknowledge, to actually go into those spaces very intentionally and do that work ahead of time means that this is not something that's going to come up and surprise you and force you to deal with it like through like interrelationally or like in something that you're doing. And so it's an incredibly powerful thing to do. And so I want to go ahead and just get started. So if you want to just take a couple of deep breaths, Spirit is showing me a journal, so I would grab a journal if I were you. Some of this stuff is going to be incredibly poignant and some of it might miss the mark. It's a general reading, but one of the things that Spirit is pointing out is the value of what we're doing right now, and doing it as a collective and doing it together is like you don't have to do it alone. And depending on what comes through, this is either going to be like one reading or I'll do parts. And if this reading is in parts, it'll be this is part one, you know, this is kind of how I'll intend it. But I don't know that it will be. I almost feel like we have to keep the collective a little bit small with this reading so that we can get really into it and get into the nitty gritty of, this is going to be somewhat, you know, I think a trigger warning is probably a good idea. This is going to be a somewhat painful reading because we're doing shadow work, but we're doing shadow work together, hopefully making what we look at less painful to deal with and like cathartic. And so that when we leave this reading, we've done the work and we're not taking it with us. We're not going to wander around with it afterwards. That is the intention. That said, if you're not in a space to do this kind of work and get a little bit heavy, then this is probably definitely, this isn't your reading, and that's okay too. We're going to probably do like fun, light, fluffier stuff coming up soon. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pull out what's going to represent for us this is the shadow is going to introduce itself right now. Like what are these characteristics? With the box, the bardo, and the comic in reverse. And then we've got the threshold on the bottom of the deck. So with the bottom of the deck right away, you know, one of the characteristics of the shadow is keeping you in place and never finishing. This is the I can't finish. I never get all the way there. I can have the dreams, I can have the hope, I can have the ambition, I can start the thing, but I can't break through, I can't achieve all the way. Like there's this being stuck in liminal spaces is an interesting thing that's coming up with this right here as I touch it. The comic in reverse is almost like this is the performer. So this aspect of you that feels like it has to perform. And we'll get into everything a little bit clear, like more, like Spirit showing me there's a lot to it with this. So we're going to come back to that. But with the bardo here being about the nature of you that might be harder for you to allow yourself to accept, like there's something about you that you find that like feeling so different as to be like fearful, frightening, or like I'm seeing an animal. I'll be honest with you, the vision that Spirit is showing me is an animal that flinches, like it's been hit or something. Like it's afraid of who it is, because encounters with its true nature have led it to be fearful. So there's something there. And then with the box here, this is about isolating yourself under layers of protection. So I heard someone say, yep. So whoever that was. Let's go ahead and get out some cards here. I want to take a look and look at a little bit more about what this is for each and everything. So I'm going to take a moment and get some cards and just let Spirit sort of show me what's coming through. I'm seeing the color white, like a white t-shirt or a white sheet or something. 6 of Wands, 3 of Pentacles. Whiteboard. Something about a whiteboard. This is one of the harder ones right here when I'm feeling with the comic. And this is like this is a card of effectively masking in a way that is like thoroughly entertaining, but losing yourself in the performance. We're going to get back to that in a second. But, and again, with the 8 of Swords here coming out with the threshold, you know, this is almost, I'm seeing these feet as being like identical. And I love that the shaman's underneath here and in reverse too, because related to this performance here is this being connected to the other side in kind of a profound way. There's something to the fact that like your spiritual gifts can operate in like a in a holy way with integrity, like out in the open. But if it's not out in the open, like it's almost like you're channeling, not misrepresenting yourself, but I would say that like your ability to channel the energies around you allow for you to do this kind of like performance thing with some level of ease. It's part of your giftedness, but if it's not transparent, it can be very confusing here. And so when we're looking at, you know, the shadow with like you not being able to sort of like step into the fullness of who you are and express from that position here with the 8 of Swords, there's like, I have no way to do that. I can't. There's a fear of really, well, it's a fear that's like a belief, basically. It's a belief that says like, I'm seeing somebody have their hand hit, like you touch a fire or something. I don't know. So there's something here about you fearing ever stepping, like you're like, I'm not going to step out of bounds. I'm not going to offend anyone. I'm not going to be too much, too big, require too much. Like there's this feeling of like wanting to be as small and as silent as possible about whatever it is to sort of, yeah, trapped. Okay, let me just, I could go off on, this is very intense right here in this corner, so I don't want to get bogged down there yet. I want to kind of have us go in a little bit of order so there's coherence. Let me just get some more cards here. It's so amazing that the way that your shadow is showing up here is largely like the fear of being seen is pervasive, but it's like, I'll show you in a second. Yeah. Okay. All right. So with the box here, you know, I sort of see this as being like, this is where you live, and you live in this very bright, light, beautiful space. But between where you live, the cosmos, and this is actually, I'm seeing a pyramid. And so you are kind of like up here, but there's a real, okay, so Spirit is saying, like, reel it back in. We've got a better kind of way of putting this. I see you as being inside this box, and I see you as being this bright light. I also see this as being a pyramid. So there's something here about your guide saying that you are at this pinnacle. And that this is kind of like your spot. It's funny because with the star card here and the sun card here as well, you'll notice that the tip of the pyramid being a star, a sun, you know, it's up in the sky. You know, it is elevated, and there is some kind of notion to like it's lonely at the top. And for you, that's a spiritual truth. For you, it's a spiritual truth that you are lonely at the top. And you have this perspective where you're able to sort of look down at all of these tiers of like knowledge and wisdom and experience between like where your access to the cosmos is that you can touch it. But there's a big distance between where you are here and where, I don't want to say everybody else, because it's not everybody else. You can see how there's like a long stack. You know what I mean? People are sort of at a gradation. But this box here says like, I am alone up here. And so actually, you know, it's funny because like Spirit is showing me this is being sort of a truth, but at the same time, this is your problem. You know, this is your shadow. This is showing up as your shadow, is like, maybe there's something wrong with you not being able to connect with all of these gradations of perception and experience. Because there's some otherness that has positioned you in a way that, like, I don't think that you put yourself here on purpose. I think it kind of ended up there. And now it's like, how do we get you connected to, you know, the chorus of perception around you so that you can have better feedback? Because, you know, with the box card here being about you being sort of like set apart alone, I feel to a certain degree, with that sort of speaks to, this is a problem. This isn't a good thing. This is actually a problem. And two things can be true at the same time. You can be from a spiritual perspective that is like very close to whatever this peak is that kind of touches the cosmos. That can be true, but it can also be true that you're at a detrimental disconnect from the rest of the world, and that this is somehow a choice. And so we want to look at why this is a choice, because we are seeing the Six of Wands and the Three of Pentacles as being, the word that came through was grandiosity, and I was like, don't say it. You know, because I think that there's fear around that, and we can look at the fear around that, but it's almost like you don't want to show up in your own fullness, because there's a fear of being perceived in some level of grandiosity, or there's this fear of, I'm hearing, getting entangled in somebody else's agenda or opportunity. This way in which, like, what you have in the way of assets with the Six of Wands, like this is also like victory after a long battle, like what you've earned in the way of like self-confidence. And Spirit is showing me like this self-confidence where like, you know what you know, what you know. And when people go to question what you know, you're like, you have no idea what it took to earn that confidence. And I get to have this confidence. I get to stand here with this presence. I get to be this way. It took a lot, you know, there's a lot that went into making you you. And so that's where the distance really is like this place of confidence where you're not really sure how to communicate vulnerability as part of it. So there's this know-it-all quality here, and it's showing up as a shadow. And I can hear your higher self almost being like, I earned that though. I earned that though. That's the thing, is I earned it, and it's true and it's right. I deserve it. I can have it. But you're creating a distance between you and the rest of the world without even realizing it. And it's an energetic thing. You know, it's an energetic thing. Spirit showing me like you've come to this place within yourself. You are this spiritual kind of a beacon, but you're putting off this energy that says like, I guess there's a little grandiosity in there, a little tiny, like little smithereen. I don't know if that, I don't think Spirit is saying like grandiosity is like, is how you feel, like fear. Some of this thinking and this perception actually is, but it's a little bit different than that. It's more like you set yourself apart at a certain point. You know, you may have been set apart to begin with when you grew up with whatever your very unique gifts are, may have put you at a distance from people, which is made for you to have like this, like kind of almost like a turbocharged progress. I'm seeing a flower like bend towards the sun. So there's something about like what created this, but it's operating as a defense instead of an asset right now. And with the Star card and the Sun card here being, you know, again, about this distance that's created, there's got to be something that we can do. And we're going to look at that in a second to bridge this gap between where you are and the different gradations of perspective, so that you don't, so that your like rise, your triumph doesn't become something that keeps you from connecting, right? So this is something that we want to look at here. And, you know, how it relates to threshold is, again, like, whether you feel a cut above the rest, or you feel like the othering that you were subjected to put you in a position where you now have a perspective that it's not, you can't even imagine what these other perspectives are. There's a simultaneous, like, it feels good, but it also feels bad. I don't know how to totally explain that, but so we're gonna look at the root of this in a second, and then we're gonna see if we're gonna tease all of these out. The whole point of shadow work is not just to identify it, but to tease it out. And so this is this is why any loneliness is existing for you. It is right here. It's not like you're not likable. It's not people, you know, it's sort of like you can only get so close to people before you bump up against something here in the way of, like, not being able to relate, right? We're gonna get back to it. So with this Bardo, the Page of Pentacles, the Six of Pentacles, and the Two of Cups, so this really is the situation where, like, I feel like your shadow is related to othering. Because the box, I'm seeing like this set apart at the top, this tippy top. And over here with the Bardo is about being in between two places. It's sort of like the valley. So with you having this opportunity to get your needs met in an unorthodox way with this Two of Cups, it's absolutely contributing to your part of, like, what it is. Like, Spirit keeps on saying, look at it like this. This is a person who was showing me, like, somebody who has been othered, yes, but who in that experience of being othered has made a home there. And the Eight of Swords belief that there's no connection possible, you know, to these other fields and gradations, which is representative of, like, other individuals, other people. It's feeling like I can't connect to those fields. There's no place for me in those fields. But there seems to be a place that you've made for yourself, and a place that you feel comfortable, an opportunity here to sort of have some of this generosity. Some of your needs are getting met, like, and it's interesting. It's not that your needs are getting met in an artificial way. With this Two of Cups, you are being seen clearly. There's an exchange taking place, but it's taking place in the liminal space of the Bardo, which means you're not going anywhere with these connections, not necessarily. There's something that we're going to look at here, but again, like, this is a cause right here of that. So, you know, this feeling of not being able to connect has caused this indirect connection to a liminal space where, again, it's something that energetically, like, with this feather, with this is not a heart, it's a bag of coins, but I'm being reminded of, like, weighing of the heart. You know, are you, gosh, you know, I love, like, I see it, Egyptian, Thoth, the weighing of the heart. Again, you know, it's funny because this can come off as, like, I am the bright light star. Why we're looking at it in terms of shadow is that, in some ways you're meant to be connected. You're supposed to connect. You're supposed to interact. You're supposed to move through the different, like, planes of experience that are you in relationship to others. It's a really important reason for you to be here. So there is this aspect of you not necessarily like the light, bright, like, perfect. Like, I feel you as being, like, on the quest for an inner perfection, and that part of what you're missing here with the shadow is that by setting yourself apart or feeling like you can't, that this is not accessible. Eight of Swords tells me this isn't on purpose. Like, you're not, like, trying to be like this. This is just, this is. But we're looking at it because there is some agency here. There is a way in which you can begin to tinker with this by not looking at it. You're looking at it like it's a value. That's, like, one of the biggest stumbling blocks to sort of, like, getting past this and sort of beginning to make some of these connections, is looking at this place of tippy-top isolation as a kind of value. And it's coming up as a shadow. It's because you're better off with working your way through this and being able to sort of have connections This is the distance. This is the pushing people away that you don't realize is happening because your heart's not really all the way in it. And your heart's not really all the way in it is because you feel like you can't connect over here. You have to connect over here. That's how you get your needs met. That's how you've learned how to get your needs met. And so to step out of that is to know that you already have this skill set so down pat. Like you can take this skill set of connecting with other realms and ideas and like ways of being in the world and all that like beautiful texture that makes you you. You take that with you. But when you take that with you into connections, there's a cool alchemy that allows you to break out of this right here, which is the shadow of like non-conformity coming up as also like a push away. Like, no, you're not going to get near me. I'm not going to conform. You know, so there's something there. And so just get a sip of water. You are different and unique. You know, and it did cause a kind of othering, but this is something that like is really valuable in relationship, and it's valuable in relationship to people who like, they love you. They love your quirky weirdness and your different perspective. They love, like, oh my God, my heart, I can feel it right now. Like, it's just, I felt like the sun like blew up in my chest here, the sun card on the bottom of the deck. They like that you look at everybody and you're like, you don't love me. Like, this is going to be like the biggest point of like problematic pride we have with you with this shadow, is that you are like, I can't connect with these people. Like I can't enter into relationship with others. That's what this threshold problem. I can't finish. I can't do this. I can't enter into a relationship with others. And the same problem you have with finishing something is in entering into a relationship with a finished product. A finished product is something that you don't have control over. So it's like you're creating things, my baby, I love you. And the finished product is putting it out there, and it's like, then you lose control. And that's something that messes you up. And Spirit is saying like, and the same thing is with relationship. Having the idea of what you want the relationship to be is so nice, but being in a relationship means you're losing control of it. You don't like that. So here we have a control freak problem a little bit with your shadow, and there's no judgment at any of this. I need you to understand that shadow work is about getting there first, so you don't have to get there in relationship. Like you don't have to get there with your shadow of, I totally lost the channel, like right in the middle of that sentence. But Spirit's almost saying like, you know, yes, the shadow work is to intentionally get there first. And with you, taking away some of these barriers of no one can love me, no one will love me, no one can see me, no one will see me, is actually knowing that like people do see you and love you. Believe it or not, like that's happening. And the reason why that rhetoric goes in a circle is because of that fear of feeling like you can't cross the threshold into relationship. And that's a very significant fear, and that's what's sort of causing you to show up in this way with your gifts, where instead of your gifts being something that you present to the world as an offering, it's something that you're using to, in some way, like you're using your gifts to keep yourself at a distance from people. You don't even know that it's showing up energetically as like, I don't need you, I don't want you, do my own thing. You know, like that's what this shadow, these are two people there. This is someone, this is you, this is representing you. And this is someone who's like, is this person like me? And you are thinking about this other energy behind you, or this other world, and you're up in here, and you know, and you're not even connecting with this person. And this is where you're falling short in terms of your destiny and what you're meant to do. You know, like the word sin sucks. I would never use it. I don't believe in it as a concept. But if there is such a thing, it's basically falling short by allying with your like limitations instead of allying with your potential. That's really the only way that like, if there, that term sucks, but if there was a good term for it, I would like it to be, because that's like really what this ends up being for you. And so when we think about this world card in the tower, and like these tumbly people, and this lack of connection with anything tangible, we're talking about what it means to break out of this performance like energy is it's an energy that's interesting. So Spirit's saying like, yeah, you can perform in a number of ways, and people perform like by like, you know, in persona without even realizing it to a certain degree. When you identify with your ego, that's a type of performance. Another type of performance, if you channel, is to channel all the time. And it's because you can, but it's also, but it's an escape when you're not spending that like equal amount of time, like grounding, people, connections, keeping it, you know, there's something to be said for like, I can't have surface conversations. I can't do that surface thing, but there's an arrogance in it. Is this like shadow? You know, yes, you can. And yes, and there's so much value in that conversation. I'm seeing a deli, or maybe it's like a bodega space, and I'm seeing some man outside smoking a cigarette, and I'm seeing this conversation between two people outside of a bodega, and this man must be, I'd say, yeah, he's rough looking, so it's like hard for me to pinpoint an age exactly, but older. And this younger energy, and this conversation between them is so robust, and there's this energy activation and this beautiful magic that is happening, this alchemy. And Spirit is showing me like, yeah, you see that kid? That's a kid that walks by this guy every day, annoyed at the smell of the cigarette, and is like judging, like, look at you, you know, can't connect. And Spirit is saying like that to value these relationships, these chance connections, these opportunities at small talk is to deplete your resources in terms of the magic, the alchemy that is available for your day, and what you're taking with you, and the moods and everything, and the fluctuations. Like, you're limiting your guide's ability to access you, and you limit your interactions with others. That's a really big thing. And so Spirit is saying this is coming up as a shadow, and we're gonna like pick it all apart. Again, this is like, we're here to heal, and I believe we can, which is, I'm only doing this because I believe that we can heal. Otherwise we wouldn't be opening these cans of worms. I think this is probably going to be like a pick a card 3-part series, so I can feel it. Yeah, I can feel it sort of moving in that direction. With the World card in the Tower here, you know, a new chapter for you is like required, because there was no real foundation built here on this position, and we're going to look at that in a second. You know, this is where you're not able to make the connections that you need. You come into orbit with people, and because you're showing up in a performance of some kind, and again, going back to this idea of performance, like, don't think of it as like you're being fake. That's not it at all. This is a coping mechanism. It's a protection mechanism too. Like, who can attack the true you if what you're showing up with? Spirit is saying a lot of times when we disavow the ego, then we step into always channeling 100% of the time. This is a channeled experience. And Spirit is saying again, like, there's still self-abandonment in that. You know, you're not abandoning yourself to an ego. You've worked through that, but now you're kind of abandoning yourself to a state of being that is outside of your state of being a little bit. You know, it's like, for a lot of you, this is a job, which is like, this is good, it's amazing, you're spiritual, but then you really do have to come back to earth, you know, to a certain extent, and spend time participating and existing in spaces where you take time off from that, so that you can experience yourself in a different way, bring in different energies, have different kinds of connections. And so it's like, when you're at that height or that distance, Spirit is saying your guides can't really, we need a little bit of from the bottom up, and not just all top down, you know? And so for you to be able to begin to make these connections, because right now it's like you can connect with Spirit, but Spirit can only lead you certain places for growth and expansion. Sometimes you have to have that growth and expansion within the realm of relationships. And so this is why we have this tower here, around like there not being a foundation and a need for a new chapter, like that you're in a perpetual state of new chapter, because you're not stepping into the relationship, stepping into the finished product. And so you're always having to be staying in that new chapter in order to sustain this distance. So this is kind of, we're going to call it pile number 1, because I'm going to do other ones. I feel like that's what the kind of night we're having. So for pile number 1, like, you know, this is really, you know, a shadow of being othered has caused you to feel like you can never connect. And I want to look at the roots for a second. I just want to pull in, I want to see something. I want to see the roots. Let's look at the roots of each one of these shadows, so we can begin to sort of heal that moment. Heal at the source of a Spirit saying, like, a wound that that began one place and ended up creating an enormous shadow. So let's just look at this origin of this wound, so we can better address it. Yeah, let's take a look at addressing this at a practical level here. Right. So, first of all, Spirit wants to say, listen, like, you know, you do come in with you come in with so much privilege. And like, when we talk about privilege, it's a spectrum-y kind of a thing. Like, there's no two ways about it. And you not knowing your value or what's valuable about you or what are your assets is a really big part of why the shadow exists in the way that it is. And so if we haven't been experienced in a genuine way by others, and this can happen like so easily, like this isn't any way, like I want to like emphasize 1000% that we're not talking about being fake. We're talking about the kind of masking that happens when people reject you early enough in life that you know better than to show up in, you know, in true form. And I think that that's what we're looking at here. You know, when we look at where this wound started, where did you, and we can trace this back to family, because you can sort of see that you've never felt that connection. You've never felt known, seen, appreciated, liked, wanted, loved. Like I can feel with you that, as I'm looking at family, room, house, unexpected income, again, like being devalued, being not valued, and concern. When people express concern but don't offer help, that's really shitty. I want to just say that right off the bat. When somebody says, I'm concerned about your performance in school, not helping you. I'm concerned about the way that you express yourself, not helping, but without doing anything but like pointing out a problem or pointing out a concern, especially this is an energy that like is withholding to begin with. So already that there's not any love coming. There's not demonstrable or obvious unconditional love going on. And so there's always this craning towards approval. And so when there's not enough approval, and then you get these criticisms with no help, with no rearing, it can lead to a situation where, let me pick up these cards again, you don't give you don't show up. You don't show up as yourself because you don't expect to be appreciated. You don't volunteer your ideas because you don't expect anybody. Not only this concern here is like somebody that in your early development expressed love by saying, I'm concerned. But all you heard was like, you are insufficient, you are failing. And without any kind of sense of how you're supposed to do something about that. It's just like, you were just like, I'm not going to volunteer myself, my information, or the things that I have to talk about, or that exuberance that you carry. All of this kind of went underground because nobody was appreciating those traits and those qualities in you that make you beautiful. And you know, when we see the family room in the home, there wasn't anyone making an effort to connect with the you that you are. There were people around you that would express concern and kind of move on from there. I'm gonna get a sip of water because I want to look at this. Let me see. Well, you've built this fortress of solitude around this idea that, like, I'm seeing these two pictures on the wall as being significant, maybe mother and daughter. But it can also just be, this is like a fixed portrait. And so this family room is really interesting because Spirit is showing me that the people who usually, how do I get this? It's like very big, actually. This would be like a big, long reading in and of itself, just looking at this. But it's sort of like there's a room that is vacant. So where there would be a family huddled around each other, talking, communing, learning about each other, like loving each other, there's this vacancy. And this vacancy is represented, instead of people being in this room, there are portraits. And so there might be like somebody, like maybe a patriarchal figure, or it might be a mom, who everybody gets their picture and they have to stay in their box and they have to be that picture and they have to live in that picture and they have to operate in that picture and that picture has to flatter the room, but nobody is getting the opportunity to experience anything other than these like fixed, like stay in the fixed picture, operate in the fixed picture, don't step out of the picture. You're not allowed to exist as anything other than like that which fits in the picture that I want the world to see, or I want to experience for myself, or that I think like will equal happiness and joy for the whole group or whatever. And meanwhile, you're like, I don't live in that fucking picture. You know, excuse my language, but you're like, I don't live in that picture, you know, and that's this fortress of solitude that sort of like keeps you out of any, you're not even in a picture, you know, because you don't think that there's any picture where you belong. Because the picture that you belong in certainly isn't the one that's on that wall. And so like, it's just really kind of closed you off. And so Spirit is basically saying, you know, one of the things that we want to do is begin to think about the fact that that's not the only room in the world. And that room might not even be a great representative of like what's going on. And that those pictures, you know, maybe are meant to be, you know, maybe those pictures are designed to be busted out of. You know, that they're there to present a challenge for you to break out of, you know, and then once you've broken out of them, that there's an opportunity to connect, but until that breaking out has happened. And Spirit is saying for a lot of you, it's never been safe to break out. And so we have to sort of admit that part of the shadow work is that, you know, this is where this pain comes from, or this othering comes from, or this feeling that there's no place of belonging where what you have to offer will be received. When we realize that that is a false story, that is a shadow that is keeping you from experiencing people who absolutely want what you have to offer, then we're really moving over to like this whole issue of this is where this started, you know. And what I want to just look at real, I'm just trying to think of how I want to continue this. I'm just going to keep going because this is a lot. And so if you have to take this moment and like, you know, it's hitting you hard and you want to breathe, like, know that this is something that this is experience that you're not having alone. There's a whole collective of us here, and that each and every one of us had, you know, there's this unlucky, the luck of the draw. There's like the unluck of the draw, the lack of luck of the draw. And for whatever reason, you're trapped in a story where you can't find access, the door in, the invitation. You're not really finding it. And that's such a pattern. That pattern started really, really, really early in life. And it started so early in life, you might not even realize that there's some aspect of this is a self-persisting policy. I know that that's not the right sentence. It's something prophecy. Anyway, right in the middle here, we have how like the shadow is influencing your life. How this is becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. There it is. Becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy based on this interaction here is creating this situation here, which then creates that situation. So the way that the seed, where this started, is feeling like there was no one that wanted what you had to offer. So when you're little and you're like, hey, I have this life to offer, I have these insights to offer, and everybody's like, shut up, I don't want to deal with you. That really locked you inside and got you seeking to get your needs met through your imagination, through your connection to the divine, anything but reality. And reality is a funny word, you know. It's, you know, when we're doing shadow work, we're talking about you being able to walk into a room and own it. That's what I mean by reality. This is my room. This is where I'm standing. This is what I have to do in this space to be, you know, a healing presence or a loving presence or however you want to show up. But it's being able to show up and be present, and it's not all of these layers of anxiety and is this person thinking that of me? Are they feeling that way? You know, everyone rejects me. You know what I mean? Like there's like, if you think about every single one of these fields or perspectives as being something that you consider to be not inviting you or not letting you in, because that's what this does, then you're going to like get your needs met in ways that we're going to look at the value and the gifts from these shadows, because that's next. But what we're seeing here is that you really have brought yourself, like, you know, I see this as being like you connecting with the unconscious mind, you connecting with the unseen, you connecting with these other dimensions and becoming this very incredible, magical, multi-dimensional being, and you are, and it's amazing, and I love this about you. But with distance horizons, again, of being, not feeling like you can't be accessed or that no one can access you, that's not true. You know, number one, that's not true, but also this is because you don't trust anyone. This is really, you know, this manifests as like, as not being able to trust anyone. This monster here is like all of this fear about like being judged, not having what you have to offer be what anybody wants, having to offer something else right over here because you don't think that anyone wants what you have to offer. And Spirit is basically saying, you know, this is a mechanism of really not trusting the universe and sort of keeping yourself at a distance because, again, what you may have experienced in early childhood around there not being people receptive to what it is you had to offer isn't like isn't a truth. It's not like it's for that situation and that circumstance, and maybe your parents were immature, and maybe they had a lot that was distracting them, and maybe your siblings were also, you know, feeling underloved themselves, and maybe there was a scarcity around attention, and that scarcity around attention meant that like your needs, being whatever they were, substantial, like all the stuff that we can contextualize in, really framed this stage for you that says no one wants what I have to offer. And so what's probably a gift here with this bardo, you know, getting your needs met in this magical way, is also just a result of you not trusting people to want what you have to offer, but somehow trusting the unseen to want what you have to offer, which is really interesting because, again, this is where we're seeing it as more space spent here means more distance from these other fields over here, which means more feeling like an alien, and feeling like an alien having to show up and try and mask to be more like these other fields, but still not meeting, still not getting to that place of meeting. And so that's really what we're seeing here over in with the World card and the Tower, is like, how can we get you out of this cycle of liminal spaces? This is very much like working with Hecate is probably like something that you do or should do, because she lives in this. It's really amazing. But with the Tower here in the World, like we want to get your foundation out of having no foundation. Like the Tower is a crumbling foundation and constant change as a result, constantly trying to like keep it together, which is why we have this courtship, the official person, and despair. This is a really interesting combination here as the seed, because what we have here is this feeling like in order to be in relationship, you have to be an official person. You have to have arrived. You have to have like figured it all out. You have to be showing up with $2 million to be worth being in a relationship with. Like you have to have a perfectly like, your body has to be perfect, or like no one can come near it. You know what I mean? There's this way in which this feeling, the price of relationship is to have already established yourself with all these accolades and rewards and this position, and this leads to this despair of like, I have to get here in order to get there, and so since I can't get here, I'm never going to get there. And so there's this feeling, and that's why this mask was created. Because this official person, you may not be there yet, but you feel like in order to have this, you have to show up like this. You don't have to show up like this. You know, that's sort of the truth is, like, in order to enter into a relationship, this person doesn't enter into a relationship. This person has a position somewhere. You know, they're an official person. So Spirit says for you to sort of be able to begin to show up as yourself means not showing up as this official person, but really showing up as this person over here who, you know, they're not even showing up as despair, but showing up just like authentically means not having to reach despair. I want to see the hidden strengths of this so that we can get a little bit of good news, because we're going to get the hidden strengths that have been there. For every shadow is your superpowers. Where do your superpowers come from? It's like the superhero trope, you know, it's like it always comes from some shadow. Your superpowers always come from a shadow. And so let's take a look at your superpowers because of this shadow before we look at like what the advice is for like embracing it, integrating it. Because once you're able to sort of like take the sting out of this, like, you know, once you're able to look at it and say, whatever the circumstances were, they jumbled me to the extent that I can't show up, you know, I can't connect, you know what I mean? It's like so when you look at like what's causing your disconnection problems and you take it out of these stories that say like nobody loves you, That's just not true. And you bring it into like, well, you know, in my family growing up, people didn't really want to receive what I had to offer. They didn't understand it. There wasn't a place for it. Probably wasn't a place for anything. That doesn't mean that the world doesn't, that I can't connect, that there aren't fields of connection where people will understand me and where I can have those experiences for growth that my guides need me to have. So, you know, removing the shadow, saying I might be this pinnacle of this bright light, but I'm just as in need of connection as anybody else is, and I'm just as valuable as anybody else is, and I'm just as weird too. You know what I mean? Like that's, you gotta take the imperfect with the perfect and mix it all together and say that there are people, that there are fields of energy that will reject you, but it's not ubiquitous. And so you, by showing up as yourself, not in this official person capacity, the impressive, when you show up as yourself and not the impressive. And I think that, like, you know, it might be handy for you to write down the impressive and sort of check yourself when you're coming into a room and ask, like, am I showing up as myself or am I showing up as the impressive? And if you find that you're trying to show up as the impressive, then you might realize that you're trying to show up as at a distance, don't come near me. The impressive is not approachable. The impressive you can't have a friendship with, you know. And so that's a mask that, you know, spirit wants you to get rid of. But, you know, and so as you begin to understand that you're not really trapped in this difference where nobody can reach you and you're gonna have to always just be like from this high atop the thing, like how you're not really trapped here. And again, we're not, none of this is judgment. Like, listen, this is shadow work, and as a collective, we're in it together. And so this is not, you're so special you think that, you know, like nobody can touch you. This is like you're alone and you're lonely. That's why we're doing the shadow work. And so when we understand that this is not a permanent condition, that this is not where you live, that this is not who you are, but this is a mechanism of defense, because when you were really little, nobody was there to look at everything you had to offer and say, like, that's really valuable. And that no one met you in that space and helped you get to know yourself and as yourself, or, you know, even like spent time with you. It seems like only these concerns, you know, only criticisms, which really, there's this way in which we recognize this, and then we can turn it around and we can say, like, that guy on the way out of the deli that's smoking a cigarette, you know, that's like there's an alchemical opportunity there. Go for it. You know, that person that works at the library that you see every day, you know, they're holding a piece of this mystery that you have been looking to solve for years, that you don't realize would ever be living with that person. But now that you're open to the possibility that you're not that you're not at such a distance that you think you are, that you can, you know, again, like there's this opening up that spirit is calling you into in relationship to these shadows. And as we look at the superpowers that these shadows have given you, because they have, you can take those superpowers with you and then also connect and heal this, so you don't have to have the shadow with you. So spirit is saying here that there are superpowers with all of this. The law of cause and effect, you know, what this tells me is that you, having grown up, lived and developed these superpowers in these liminal spaces. And by liminal space, I mean between the experience of wanting a relationship and having a relationship. So everything in between those two spaces has been where you have done like the world building, and massive world building, impressive world building. And that world building you've done is world building that you've done on yourself. And you've done this with this beautiful echoing from the divine, from the unseen. And so you're very informed. So when you think of like what makes us who we are, it's this mirroring. And so your mirror was the divine. How do you think that manifests as you holding some very intense, beautiful divine energy wherever you go? Again, it creates a kind of a distance only if you make it distant. So you have this divine energy that you carry with you, and with a level of potency. You have these abilities that are sort of extraordinary and, like, you know, and very different. It's a perspective that brings a difference into other people's perspective, because it's not people who have access to each other don't have access to this Bardo over here the way that you do. And so this is a beautiful, amazing quality that gives you this incredible power over both the seen and the unseen realms in your life. And by power, I don't mean control, I mean relationship too. So you have a better relationship to the unseen realms than you have to the seen realms, but you have a relationship to both. That's like double most have, right? And so when we think about how you've got this fortress of solitude because of what you have on offer being something that people respond to with concern instead of love. You have really developed this ability to perfect yourself, to make a job of perfecting yourself, because in a way it's basically created this you have to show up as this official person. You have to become this incredible something. You have to be so impressive in order to have even an ounce of, for people not to be concerned with what you have to offer. You have to make that have to offer the best thing ever. So you have this work on yourself that has been going on in silence, in the absence of anyone, any audience that can tell you how you've grown, you know, what it is that you have perfected within yourself. Like, you're secretly been on this like self-perfecting, making a full-time job out of perfecting, so that you would have something to offer. Meanwhile, you've done more work on yourself than 100 people. And what you have to offer, therefore, like the superpower is that you're now presenting with something really, really valuable. You've been working on it your whole life without actually bringing it out into the open. And so this law of cause and effect here with the threshold is the minute you step out into the open with what you have to offer and what you've been working on forever and ever and ever, the effect is going to be a tremendous amount of acceptance and love. It's just going to take a little bit of breaking out of this I'm so different nonsense. Because you're simultaneously authentic and unique and everyone else at the same time. You got to be able to bring those two things together, and that's what this integrating thing is. With the universal harmony and universal balance around, you know, the superpower for you here is that you have traveled these distant horizons and you have created a level of balance. You do have a level of inner homeostasis that is really, really powerful, because you carry with you almost a fearlessness. You have figured out a way to meet your own needs, to be self-sustaining, to break out of the confines of what was available to you and find sustenance in impossible places. So the asset here is that you're always going to have that universal harmony. You're always going to be in harmony with the universal rhythms. You're always going to have that place of balance that says, I can exist in any environment. Like, I am self-sustaining. So that's another superpower. If you take this and just live like this, as self-sustaining for the rest of your life, then you're staying on top of this pyramid and you're not connecting in the way that your guides want you, though. So this superpower can work against you, which is what we're talking about. And so it's really important for you to check yourself in terms of like always being in balance and harmony, but having that balance and harmony be at the cost of interaction. And Spirit is saying you think that the balance and harmony is at the cost of interaction, which is why you're like, I'm not going out, I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to upset my balance and my harmony. But Spirit is saying in relationship, you're going to be able to take that. That's why it's a superpower. It actually turns out that this balance and harmony comes with you into relationships, into interactions, and that you get to keep it. And so like, this is something that like that elephant that's tied to the tree that thinks that it can't get away from the tree because it's tied to the tree. When it grows up, it could rip the tree out. This is really you not knowing that, like, that's that limitation. I can't move away from the tree. That's that anxiety. I can't connect with other people. The anxiety that I can't connect with other people can play really, really loud and keep you from connecting with other people. That doesn't mean that when you connect with other people that you'll connect with them and that harmony and that balance will immediately be there. And Spirit is saying, I want you to point out to this person that you're talking to that they know exactly what you're talking about. You know, like, all of the anxiety, but the minute you're in conversation, smooth, balance, harmony. So take that with you in terms of integrating the shadow and beginning to see the hidden strengths of the shadow, is that this shadow has given you a confidence because of your ability to self-sustain. And that once you get past the anxiety of approaching, once you've made the approach and you're in whatever the situation is, connecting and interacting, this will be with you, and you know that it is. So it's like, always remember that. So that's like part of the superpower. Now, with the free will and the Cancer, this is a very interesting superpower that has come from, this is a shape-shifting kind of a quality, actually. It's a very interesting gift. Well, with having to show up as the official person, hey, I'm here. I can do all of these amazing things. Now you want to be my friend, right? And Spirit is saying, well, the superpower here is that you take your bevy of gifts with you wherever you go. And that you don't have to show up like, seeing, Spirit is showing me it's, I don't even know what that is. I'm seeing somebody with, has like a horse, donkeys or whatever, and Tinker Tailor. It says, I think what it is, it's, they're going from town to town selling their wares and their tools. And Spirit is basically saying, like, this is sort of like, you have come up with such a bevy of tools to express yourself and to be able to express yourself in a free way with like this armor of the official person, that you don't really realize that like you really do take your value with you wherever you go. It's become like a very automatic thing. So it's almost like you are the official person. Maybe you've been in despair thinking like, oh, no one's connecting with me, I'm all by myself. But like the amount of acrobatics that has gone into constantly perfecting yourself, self-sustaining at a level that is like subterranean, and then showing up like in your fullest capacity, that this is all really impressive, actually. And so Spirit is saying that like your arsenal of what you have to take with you into connection is incredible. And so when we look at what it means for you to embrace your shadow, is to understand that all of this has not led you nowhere. It means that when you take that step into a relationship, when you take that step, and this is approaching, we're going to look at this in 1 second, what it means to integrate, what it means for you to do this. Step out of otherness, step out of difference and into whatever the commonalities might be. When you do that, you're going to bring this bevy of incredible wealth, and the cause and the effect is that you're really going to experience the privilege of what was previously a situation where you were so othered, and now it becomes a situation where you take that journey, you know, and the clarity that it gives you back into connections, and then it's like it comes full circle, and then you're going to be able to experience yourself being experienced as holding this value without having to like present it, like check to see if it's being, you know, seen, run away and check and be in another space, you know, and not be available, then like peep out again, like this is crazy. And it's not, again, I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes when I'm channeling, I'm like, forget what I'm doing, but I mean it in a way that says like, this totally makes sense, completely understandable. And so now as you integrate, and we're going to get the how do you embrace and integrate this, this is the gift, you know, there's a gift. So let's take a minute and grab this deck. What is it going to mean for you to embrace and integrate this gift? I think it's going to be a long one, but that's okay. Hey, shadow work is kind of a long... Spirit is saying, don't be afraid of it. Like, don't be afraid of like, this is kind of like a zigzag dance. Like, am I ever going to be seen, appreciated, understand? And like, am I going to make my connections? Like, where's my people? There's fear, and Spirit is saying, just take a deep breath. You have more than enough like here to work with. In fact, you've become incredible. Spirit says that, yeah, peopling is hard, and not every one of these layers or of interactions is going to be worth your time. And you'll know, you know, that's really where your intuition, it's like your intuition has gotten really, really good, but you're not using it interpersonally. So your trust in it isn't what it could be. So you can begin to trust your intuition interpersonally. I like it a lot, a lot. Okay. So bottom of the deck, again, we have like your reward, your respite, your evaluation, coming into a place of relief about this. So, you know, one of the first things we want to do in terms of embracing your shadow is to understand that like all of this hard work has not gone to waste, and it's not going to waste. It's made of you a very beautiful caliber of person to like be in a relationship with. And that when you allow yourself to be experienced, which is what crossing that threshold really is, first of all, you need to make these approaches, and you need to make these approaches from a place that is not like high stakes everything. Yeah, and also make these approaches from a place of like, where does your heart feel safe? Bring your heart to places where it feels safe, not like places that are cool and awesome. Like, it's really important to like make that distinction. That where your heart, like you, and again, and this came through someone's reading, I don't know why it's coming through again, but it is, so maybe that person, you know, there's this notion of go where your heart go where your heart feels safe, right? Your heart doesn't necessarily feel safe at a party, but your heart might feel perfectly safe at a writing group or a book group or a community cleanup. Your heart might feel really, go where your heart feels safe. Begin with interactions where your heart feels safe. That's a really good way to work that muscle of trust. And so Spirit is basically saying here with the reward that is coming your way when you step out, you know, and understanding that there's still going to be fields of energy that you know, like it's like there's nothing there for you to really connect with. But you assume with every interaction that there's something of value to connect with, and you will be rewarded with having your value seen in kind. Yeah, it's like one of the first, that's a magic spell, it's a magic trick right there. And so with this companionship, nobility, and self-realization, your experiences in companionship are going to reveal to you just how valuable the work that you've done has made you. Not that you weren't intrinsically of like utmost value, but because you've never believed that that intrinsic worth was worth anything, and you've done nothing but tirelessly toil, you're going to get to have the reward of what it means to have that, the bounty of what you've become, the experience. This is how you're going to experience it for yourself. And so Spirit is saying that opening up around this, and also understanding that now that unseen underworld that you have been relying on for all of your sustenance now becomes your support team. They help you close all deals. You know, they lead you. They are still there for you. You are not abandoned by anything. Like, you're not like having to choose one over the other. The beauty here is that you take that balance with you into your interactions. And so your giftedness and like your connection is now something that you can bring with you into interactions, and also offer your perspective onto the world, which is beautiful and transformative for you and everyone else. So this is something that everyone needs. Now, with what it means for you to approach with that safe heart, you know, on the one hand, we're saying go where your heart feels safe. The dog park, that's great. You know what I mean? That's where Spirit has so much room for interaction and all these, like, go where it feels safe. For your heart to express openly and without any fear of reprimand or judgment. And to the extent that you're haunted by fears of reprimand and judgment, again, some of that is this othering that happens, whether you're othering yourself or othering others, like, it's still problematic. And so when we begin to embrace, we embrace that we are perfected, you know, in our imperfect way for a relationship with another, and that person's going to fit like a puzzle piece, and we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be yourself, right? Understanding that you have this, embrace the support that you have from the other side. And then the ancient wanderer, hope, incompleteness, yearning, and also the keeper of the crossroads, restlessness, independence, and appraisal. I want you to begin to bring your heart into safe places where you can speak of your journeys of hope, incompleteness, and yearning. That in taking this is, again, tinker, is it like a tinker tailor man or something like that? I don't know what that is. So I'm just like talking to the guides, like they're showing me again, like something that looks similar to this image. It's somebody who I'm seeing, like horses or donkeys, I can't really tell, but like they go from town to town with a whole store basically in a caravan. And so basically taking this journey with your heart, taking this journey into spaces where you're not leading with the official person, where you're leading with hope and completeness and yearning and discovery. And you're taking with you the power and your independence, the curiosity that is leading you out of this solitude. And what you're bringing to each and every situation is going to be like you and your perspective and what your perspective has to offer. And so that's where you're going to find these rewards. And so again, like, you're just being encouraged to do this in like a very, very safe way, but you recognize that this isolation is no good and it's unacceptable. That's the shadow, you know what I mean? And that's not condemnation. That's not someone coming at you with concern. That's someone saying, like, it totally makes sense. There's superpowers in it that you have access to, and what it means for you to begin to step back into communion and connection. Go where your heart feels safe. There's advice here. So let's get our message from Spirit. I let this go long. It's okay. Let's get our message from Spirit. Yeah, let's do that. And get your message directly from your shadow. So your shadow is going to give you this message, and then we're going to end this with something that's going to help. So let's just get this direct message from Spirit. You are worthy. I just like that surrender now. You know, like there's this internal argument with you. It's Spirit is saying like day, noon, morning, night, afternoon, breakfast, second breakfast, lunch, third lunch, supper. Like Spirit is just going on and on and on with this. Like, it's like you with, I'm not worthy. They don't see me as worthy. They don't think I'm worth getting to know. They don't want to know me. I'm too much of a burden. It's too weird. I'm too weird. It's too terrible. Like no one cares. Like people don't give a shit. People are distracted. People think that. People think this. I mean, oh my gosh. So Spirit is saying like, that's all you be. Like every time, like even like the slightest like wind of you are worthy, there is this like morning, noon, and night. People don't appreciate, people don't see, people like this. And Spirit is basically saying, surrender to your value and surrender to your worth. Who cares what people think, see, say? That's you going like this. And so Spirit is saying, we're just going to do a little bit more shadow. If you see all of these, so say you're in this position and you're in communion with Spirit, you're in communion with the divine, but you need to be in communion with others because you're on the earth right now. This is what we're doing. Each one of these, you know, from all the way over here, you're up here, so you can see all the way over there. You can be like, over here, can't connect with that one because that one believes in oppressive things. Okay, no, can't connect with that person. They're going to look at me and judge me. Can't connect with this other person because they're going to look at me and then they're not going to like my view because I don't like their view. Okay, can't talk to that person either. All right, over here, this other person. So there's all of this going on from up here. Even over here, you know, this person is great, but they're not going to like me because they're over here and I'm over here. Spirit says, like, let's just take a eraser, erase that. Now we have a whiteboard. We're back to this picture of the whiteboard. And then we're going to write a story. Out by the garage, there is a bodega. And that bodega, there lives a man. And that man has spent his entire life learning everything that there is to learn about cats. And that man who knows everything that there is to learn about cats also is in connection with... name any goddess, Beset. And that goddess wants to communicate this like love of life through the way that this person, you know, writes poems on the napkins in their pockets. And that person who, you know, so do you see what I'm doing? This is more complicated than what you're able to ascertain from up here. You need to kind of be, so that story was leading to this point in time where that man who writes poems on napkins, who is obsessed with cats and is the protege of the goddess Beset without even realizing it, it writes you the poem that changes the course of your day, right? That has nothing to do with their belief system. It's really important. And so Spirit is saying, I want you to surrender to your worth and your value because you too have a story like the man who writes poems on napkins and a place in people's lives to get that poem on that napkin and change the course of their day. And so we're having this revelation around Spirit saying to surrender to your value, which is inestimable. Know that you can take everything you've learned with the past into your experiences and your life, and you never have to be alone with a situation that says you got to do it this way or you got to do it that way. You do it both ways. You bring it all together and sing your own song. You don't have to be an official person. Your song sounds a lot more like, I hope, I feel incompleteness, I have yearning for, and I carry with me an appraisal and an estimation of value. That those that have eyes to see will see, and I will feel appreciated in that sight as I see them and sing my own song. And this is how we find each other. And so your shadow wants you to embrace this in-between of where you're coming from and what it provided you in vantage point and perspective, and where you're going and what that's going to give you in connection. And I'm hearing texture and richness, nourishing, beautiful. All right, this is a pile number 1. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 more of these because there's a lot of shadow work here. Step out of this place of isolation and bring your shamanness out of the sky and right down into the everything, and make this journey to the self, one that creates a bridge between you and others. Step into that wild forest and oh, I feel so good. I feel really good about where this went. Oh, we're not even finished. There's one last thing that I want to do with you. We're going to bring something. I wanted to give you something that will help you, and then we'll officially close this. We're going to bring something with you. We're going to call something, as a group, there is a magic, an alchemical magic. Those of you that are pile number 1, we're having this moment. We're in this. We're feeling this. We're getting this relief. There is a group to coming together in energetic agreement and calling something in. And so we're just going to activate something for you right now. And what we're going to be activating is communication. And we're also doing the cosmic flower. So if you want to take a deep breath, bring yourself into the sacredness of this moment, come into an agreement with me. I'm going to go ahead and call in the frequency of communication. I call in the frequency of communication for this collective to support our ability to exchange information in many different forms, reminding us to run every piece of information, both incoming and outgoing, through our heart, the center of our truth, reminding us to stay in the flow of source and balanced exchange. So calling in that energy of communication to support us now. So it is. Also calling in the energy of the cosmic flower, calling in the energy of the cosmic flower, the frequency of the cosmic flower that activates our remembrance of the place that we call home, the core from which we pour our magnificence into the world. And so we call this energy in for this collective now. So it is. All right. May those energies be with you and incorporated into what it is to embrace and integrate this shadow so that you can go into the world and take all of these gifts and begin to express them. So pile number 1, that is your reading. I love it. And so I'm glad that we got to do the shadow work together. And I thank you for being here. It's always an honor to read for you. Okay, part number 2. Let's do a group number 2. Group number 2 or part number 2. This reading is kind of like taking a course of its own. Let's get into your reading. I'm going to pull some cards that represent the overall energy of your shadow self. So let's just take a deep breath. Prepare to get into this space. Feel for our center. Okay, we've got the box, the empty room, and the creator. Interesting. With the bottom of the deck being... Holy crap. Just give me a second. I'm just looking at this and it's a little bit... This is a really significant energy. It's an energy of self-sabotage to a certain degree. And self-sabotage is never... Hold on, I have to get my energy clear. Every once in a while, I'll like sit down to do a reading and I'll feel where I need to just like bring myself into myself. This is a really difficult shadow to look at because it's a feeling of rather than let someone take advantage of me, rather than let somebody co-opt it's almost like in defiance of having anyone take anything that you do or are or say and do anything with it, shut down. Like rather than let people manipulate what I'm doing or take from me or anything, I won't do anything. And so self-sabotage is it always exists to defend you. Like, it's always like in defense of something, and it might be something that doesn't make any sense anymore, or it's from a different time. So you can't really call it self-sabotage. It's usually a defense mechanism. And in this instance, there's this fear of being co-opted. But, you know, I'm seeing it as like almost like a primal, epigenetic. I'm seeing conquering. And it's interesting, like on an epigenetic level, we all have this this experience of being nations that were conquered, having our gods conquered. And so this idea that our voices can be conquered is, or that our creativity can be conquered, or that somebody can somehow conquer what we're trying to put into the world. The reaction to that is to shut down and give nothing. And so we have to look at this, because there is this, so it's a shadow, you know, it's a significant shadow. It's keeping you from ever really creating in an open way. It's a, you know, it's, I'm going to say something and I'm going to try to find a right way to say it. Whenever you bring something in the world and you put something out, like you bring a piece of yourself into the world and you offer this piece of yourself into the world, people can respond any way they want to that sort of like, it's like giving birth, you know, like people can respond any way they want to your kids, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And you want them to grow up and have influence and reach but you don't want them to be attacked by the world, and you also don't want them to be raped by the world. You know what I mean? You don't want them to have an experience of with creativity, plagiarism is the equivalent of having your work kidnapped and like locked in somebody else's house, like being forced to perform a role that was never meant to. Like, there's something really grotesque about what happens when something is taken and repurposed for somebody else's gain. But that shuts you all the way down, and that has power over your ability to create and bring into the world, and that has power over your, you know, creative capacity for fertility. There's like a lot here, a lot of hiding, a lot of, so let's take a look, let's get into it. So I want to go ahead and, so yeah, this is what represents your shadow. These are sort of like the primary characteristics, and the way it manifests is you stop creating, and you don't even know why. You're like, I don't know why, but you can feel yourself being hurt in that way. But this is represented as a shadow, so this is something that you are participating with that is let's take a look at it. Let's look at the roots of the shadow. I kind of want to see where it comes from. And from the roots, I'm going to look at, like, let's just get into it. And see, the thing is, like, the problem with shadows is that if you, yeah, here's the thing with a shadow. You're interrupting flow, natural flow. See all creation. I mean, there's a lot that we can say here. Let's just get the information. Sorry, this is coming through like where I'm feeling like a lot of activity. And yeah, let's take a look. Participating in that, like, yeah, okay. So your guys are saying that they understand, like, why, because your sensory perception is so high. You can always feel like when things are particularly like unhealthily happening. That's cool. Sorry, I'm just like listening to your guides. Yeah, they're saying that you're just incredibly, well, there's a lot. Okay, let's look at how amazing this is actually. All right, when it comes to this King of Cups energy, you know, this is sort of you being connected to a level of depth of field that's like unparalleled. This is you having a level of mastery over like the kingdom of the sea and storms and emotions and the intelligence that way. That is inordinately inspiring in and of itself. It's self-contained. What you create comes from you. That's very rare. And so I think, you know, one of the things that Spirit kind of wants to say about this is like, you're operating out of a level of giftedness. This is coming very, this is interesting as a shadow. It's kind of hard for me to bring the message through because I'm feeling like, well, let me get out of the way. Let me just let Spirit through. So Spirit is basically saying that your level of like accomplishment, you know, the way that you create, like there is no rival, right? And so like that's kind of like the reality of the situation. So this fear is this is a dominating fear, and it's a fear to have that has the power to shut you down. It's a fear that has the power every single time. I'm seeing somebody playing chess. Let me just get some water. I'm seeing somebody who is playing chess and they realize that they're beating their opponent. And the moment that they realize that they are beating their opponent, they can't help it. It's almost like some overdrive kicks in and they start to rapidly lose. The moment they see that they're beating their opponent and they recognize that their opponent recognizes that they're beating the opponent, when they know that they're close enough to a win, they start to lose. So this is sort of something that Spirit is saying, like strategically, like you get into this place with competition, and this is really what this is, because you have to understand that like if you're in a creative field, unless you have nothing to offer, and this is like you're being like, oh, I've got nothing to offer, like just don't look away, here I am expressing myself, no, just kidding, you know, like this is trying to hide what you create, you know, because you don't want it to have exposure, because if it has exposure, you're afraid that it's going to be somehow repurposed, whatever. But what Spirit is basically saying here is that, gosh, I just like lost the channel because I like literally I keep falling out of this one. Yeah, but if you can't, this is the thing, is you can't do this. You can't care. You really can't. So Spirit is saying that this is showing up as a shadow because it's a fear that has you literally shutting down your creative capacity in defense of I don't want to say fear of winning, but you don't want your potential known because you don't want anyone to take advantage of that potential, and so you hide it as much as you possibly can. And it's and like, why do you hide it? Because you don't want to experience theft. This is something that's even from a past life that like really haunts you and scares the shit out of you. Like even like leaving your car door open, like not at all. I'm seeing somebody who like absolutely they're checking, like, did I leave, where's everything? Like this fear of theft is quite profound. And so let's take a look at this, because with the 10 of Pentacles and the Fool card here, change. Okay, I'm so curious now. I want to see exactly where this is going. So in terms of the roots of your shadow, because wow, it stops you in your tracks. It actually keeps you from a workflow, because you're like, yeah, there's a level of defensiveness about okay, let's take a look. I mean, this reading is pretty cool because it's basically like a what I love about you reading almost, because it's basically saying, you know, the change card here indicates like that the level of power that this has over you to like keep you from creating, to like shut you down, is all kind of around this idea of trying to avoid change, which is interesting. And when I look at this, I can kind of see why. But, you know, I'll just sort of, in order to kind of like give you a sense of how I see this, like in context, what Spirit is showing me with the tarot cards here is that like you have a value. Your 10 of Pentacles is like your wealth of knowledge, your wealth of experience, your wealth of insight, your wealth of talent, your wealth of giftedness. Your wealth is so like 10 of Pentacles, generational. You couldn't spend your creative capacity in a lifetime, not in a long shot. And with the Fool card being about how often you reinvent yourself and you reinvent the way that you do things and how you approach things and the way that you believe, it's rapid, like rapid, rapid, rapid. So you are on such a like your game is so accelerated. And it requires change to continue to accelerate in that way. And so Spirit is saying, you know, for you, competition, which is something that scares the shit out of you because it's usually vicious, you know, and that's when we're looking at the root over here. We're looking at where it can be really vicious. You get shut down over competition. And so anytime somebody is in competition, so we're coming back to this, that whole like field of competition, that field of creative capacity, and that field of creativity, it's kind of like a contact sport. You know, you got to look at it a little bit like a contact sport. When you create something and you put it out into the field, somebody else is going to pick it up and run with it in their yard, in a yard in their direction. I mean, everybody's going for the same goalpost. Everyone should be going for the same goalpost. What does it mean to go to the same goalpost? There's no room for like lecturing here, but here's where I think that the reason why people the whole purpose of crediting others who inspire you, and this is like a little bit of a, just put a little bit of a lecture bit here, which is like, you know, outside of the shadow work, but not by more than a hair, honestly, because this is helpful in terms of the shadow, is knowing that like everyone picks up the ball and runs in their own direction, and you know, oh God, I keep losing this channel. It's really hard for me to keep this because I think it's hitting a nerve. But it's somewhere on the idea that the reason that we pick up the ball and we pass it and we credit it along the way is so that people can look back at the path that we came on. And when we break that chain, then we're acting out of accordance with going towards that goalpost, if that makes sense. And so when you know, bring something creative into the world, it's going to come from an amalgamation of places. Whether you know how to source that or not, it doesn't really matter that much. All you need to know is that without giving proper credit, you're interrupting that, like the chain of things towards that goalpost. And the reason that this is coming through in this way is because it has to speak to the fear. And the fear behind your shadow is so intensely, like, I'm literally like flinching from the feeling of this fear. Honestly, I keep on dropping out of the channel because it keeps getting me. What you need to know about this fear is that nobody who's not playing the game that gets the ball through the goalposts is going to get to reap any rewards. Think about it like a field, a playing field, and it's a creative playing field, and people are creating towards the goal of bringing enlightenment. Anyone who's not playing the game, who's just throwing the ball around in their corner for themselves, like literally they're not going anywhere with that process. And so you have to like look at this as like the people that play fair are playing with the long view of like coming together in cooperation later, like understanding how like industry grows or whatever. This is so interesting the way this is coming through. So you don't have to worry about the people that are playing badly or not playing the game at all of cooperation for the goal of everyone. Because they're gonna burn themselves out. They're gonna end up disqualifying themselves. It's just the way that it ends up being. So like that's where like this divine justice comes in. So like when we look at this shadow and we look at what Spirit has to say to you about it, because this is very intense. This fear is like I'm like literally it's like almost impossible to like hold the channel fully because it's a very the fear is dizzying. Like it's making me kind of nauseous. I'll be honest. Is to sort of combat some of like, you know, you have this fear and you keep this as a goalpost. And so like, because we're doing shadow work, I just want to like stop and I want to interrupt with your guys. And I kind of want you to tell your guys we need to come in softer. We're in shadow work. We need to come in softer. Your guys are like uppity about this because they feel like this is your main blockage to success and financial freedom, honestly. With the change card here, they're saying because you're afraid of change, you come up with a story, and it's not like you come up with a story. It's a defense mechanism that's based in this root that we're going to come back to, that we understand why it's there. We forgive ourselves, but we also know that. Oh, I keep on losing this one. This is hard to keep my. you know, you have to understand, like, channeling, I could tell you about channeling, but channeling is the kind of thing where you have to be physically prepared for the emotions that roll through. And I keep on, like, honestly, I keep on losing this because there's so much fear of being, like, honestly, because it falls into the category for you. Oh my God. So this is going to be very heavy. Trigger warning. This is very heavy for a YouTube or TikTok or anything like that. This is very heavy for a commercial reading. And by commercial reading, I just mean like where I put it out to the public and everybody can, like, listen if they want to. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a private reading. So it's like, this is like private reading information that is coming through a collective, which is hard for me to do, but I think because, like, we're all adults here, and I want to get to the heart of why this is inordinately powerful, because it is inordinately powerful. It's literally keeping you from creating in any way that would, like, sustain you, and you should profit and be wildly successful. Like, there's no reason not. When you create something, and I think this comes from, well, it's the root of it. You know, we have the main male here, and we have the house, and we have great fortune. And this, you know, I see this main male in a way that is, like, you all have this great wealth of knowledge and ability and a talent, and there's rapid turnover. And what's interesting about this card here is that, again, I'm drawn to these portraits behind this person. And when you come in with a wealth of ability and you're, you know, stock full of valuable, like, you inherited all this greatness, you know what I mean? And I'm seeing this as an inheritance because this room is kind of speaking to that. When it's for the purpose of, like, when you're born into a hierarchy or your family, and, like, you know, everything, all the gifts go for the good of the whole, which is great. You want to sort of be oriented that way as human beings anyway. But if it was a tyrannical person, or if you experienced abuse at the hands of someone who had power over you, and, like, how you allocated your resources, how you created, and what was done with your work, if you were not the person dictating, like, what you created, if you were creating for somebody else's goals, aspirations, emotional fulfillment, agenda, that great fortune would suddenly become a prison. It wouldn't become gifts. And so it's this notion that you, it feels very much like a fear of being, like, assaulted in a certain kind of, like, particularly horrific way, to have something that's so beautiful that it's a gift and is like, you create out of that expression of love, to have that exploited or taken advantage of or dismissed or like, but especially to have it exploited will put you in this position where, like, you're never going to want to, like show that you can create something, because someone can, like, take it and use it against you, right? So there's something very powerful in that, and that's a harsh thing to come, but we're doing shadow work together. I think it's important that, like, we do think about the work that we're doing in this space as being, like, you know, where you can look at these shadows not by yourself, where you know that there's a whole group of us here, or maybe a little group, but it doesn't matter. It's, you know, enough of us have sort of gone through these experiences where we've created something beautiful and had that somehow been used. And, you know, it's a terrible feeling. Like, it's like a legitimately terrible feeling. So when we look at that and we say, like, okay, well, that is a legitimately terrible feeling, but we don't want it to stop the creative process. And Spirit is saying that in order to avoid change, because it's really a fear of change, there's this whole story about why it's unsafe to be authentic, why it's unsafe to win, why it's unsafe to succeed, why it's unsafe to create openly. And with the Chariot and the Strength card here being about, like, just like the distance that the strength of what you have to offer can go, and the Sun card being about clarity and go ahead and give it away. You know, we have false person in the reverse, and that really comes back to what we were saying about, you know, the root of this is, like, you don't want somebody who's not you you know what I mean, to take your path, you know, like there's this way in which like you have had this expectation, and here's the thing, like you do have this fear that somebody who's not you is going to have this expectation that you're going to give them your path, that you're going to somehow, like, you know, this is a fear that about, like, you know, the Chariot and strength with the pathway really speaks to, like, this is your direction, this is your road. You know, this thought that somebody could like sit around like expecting and waiting for, you know, to sort of take whatever you are and kind of present their own, like, that's not, it's not a legitimate fear. The Chariot is made up of, like, you are the fuel in anything that you create. To think that anybody could take what you create and fuel it when it's not like a general fuel, it's not a universal fuel, like you're the only fuel that can go into that container and move it in that way. Can other people sort of work with the same idea and play with the energy? You know, I think that that's what you're fearing, and that's actually not something to fear. That does end up falling into the category of not something to fear. We're going to get into why that's true when we look at the current influence, you know, because with the 10 of, this is just a 10. This is about completion, you know, and my eyes went right to the 10 because I think that you're really close to this breakthrough here with the Sun card and your glow up, and I think the Sun card in comparison to the Knight of Cups, like what you have to offer and what you have to generate life from, to create from, and what you have to give in the way of a cup, this is huge, and that is finite. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're giving, it's not like every time you create something, you give away the sun. Every time you create something, you give away a cup, you know? And so when we look at this completion, this journey, you've really come a long distance in order, in creating the strength and, you know, the like everything that is built into this King of Cups position that you find yourself in. You're ready to sort of package this gift and give it to the world in the way of yourself. But this message of concern here around the Creator is speaking to, like, you know, we look at what is keeping you. This is the message of concern. Like, the only thing that is keeping you from completing this journey of self-discovery and packaging it into a gift for the world, and in terms of what you learned on that journey and like what it meant to you, the only thing getting in your way is your concern about something as silly as a cup. And that's not demeaning the power of the shadow. This is just putting this shadow in perspective a little bit in terms of like where did this come from? This came from having things that you put into the world, you know, like a message that you sent out, like having these things come back in a way of concern, like, oh my gosh. But rather than like shut down the whole, you know, Spirit says, like, recognize where this came from. This came from having your great fortune, everything that you are, this 10 of Pentacles, and everything that is, and everything that it was to become you, to come into the world, to bring what you bring to the world, into the world, the whole tamale. This notion that, like, that power, that whole fortune, that grand, big, like, huge massiveness that is all that you are, could be, you know, taken for somebody else's purposes. You know, in some ways that's capitalism, but, like, you know, not to make it really broad, but there's this way in which, like, it is a valid fear. It does come from a valid place of exploitation. There are ways in which you've suffered, you know, in this vein, but it's a cup compared to the sun. It's a cup compared to what you have to create from and what you have to benefit from. And there's more here because it's coming up as a shadow. So this isn't like you're virtuous and this like horrible thing that's happening to you. Like, this is something that you're letting get in your way to prevent change. It's not something that's getting in your way because it's such a problem that it should shut down creativity, like, in its entirety. So we really have to look at this with, like, honest, open eyes and say, the reality is that this is a cup worth of problems, and I'm in a sun worth of position, you know, in terms of, like, the reach, you know what I mean, and the give and, like, what you have to offer. And this King of Cups speaks of, like, you self-sustaining. You don't need anything to continue to create from this way, in this way. So I want to look at the current influence of your shadow just so that we can kind of see like, well, how is this affecting you, and how much is this an actual problem versus a problem that is stopping you from creating at your fullest capacity, and is it, let's just take a look, let's really unpack this. So I'm taking a breath. This is a hard channel. You know, the energy of it is it's kind of contentious, I'll be honest with you. It has kind of like a there's a defensive kind of vibe to it, but I think that that's because it has to be understood that the pitfalls of competition in a field is that when you kick the ball, you know what I mean, you don't know where someone's going to run in what direction with it, and like how they're going to treat the ground that you've covered. You don't know that. You don't know if they're going to take the ball and then make it so that people can't find the path, you know, towards the goalpost backwards. You don't know if that's going to be like the weird one that like goes into the corner and like putters around until they get lost. You know what I mean? Like, but that's not really your, you know, Spirit is saying like thinking that that's something that you have to manage, watch, like care about too much, like, you know, to the extent that it's what the artist here I just have to take a breath. You know, I have to kind of find my way to the right spot with this, because the current influence on your work is that it's keeping you from your fortune. It's keeping the world from your perspective, and it's also it's shutting you down physically. I mean, it's having the effect of like you need to create in order to be vibrant and to feel alive, and it has the effect of shutting you down physically. And so it's affecting you, you know. There are going to be hidden strengths to this, you know, when we go through the integration process. But right now what we're looking at is the cost of this fear is way outweighing like any benefit of keeping these gifts from the world so that they can't be exploited. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing here. So, you know, this bottom of the deck energy here, when we talk about how this is, you know, how the shadow influences you, you are this beacon, but you're slowly getting drowned out, you know, by, like, it's almost like the emotional experience of whatever it is that, like, I'm picturing someone who, like, was holding this beacon up, like, proud and loud, like, happy, you know, and then all of a sudden, like, the waters came in, and they were like, where am I even going with this? Why am I holding this beacon up if it's just causing me to drown? You know, like, that's sort of like what, you know, that is. And but there's this whole story here that's kind of unfolding around, like, this, you know, as an influence. Like, you are here to, like, constantly do this churning. You know, the value that you have, and like what you, like, this is your life, this is your legacy, this is everything that you offer the world, this is what you're born with in the way of, like, all of your gifts. And this Fool card means you're constantly churning, you're constantly improving on yourself. You couldn't, like, this is like not being able to spend the money in your lifetime, not being able to create from, like, the fount of your inspiration in a lifetime, like, and constantly reinventing yourself. That's the role of this rebel. The rebel is about that reinvention and that seeing things from a new perspective. The second stuff gets stale is the second that it's somehow saturated. You know what I mean? Like, somehow it's like it's reached some saturation point. It's stale. That means it needs to be reinvented. That's you. You reinvent that wheel. That's you doing it. And so, like, to the extent that, like, you know, you can create something and have people, like, gobble that shit up. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, this whole, like, this is a feast. They can make a feast of what you create. And, you know, again, creativity in a field is a contact sport. You have to accept that like somebody's going to pick up the ball and run in their own direction with it. And if they're not running in their own direction with it, if they're repackaging it, they're not playing on the field, they're going to burn out in their corner, they're out of the game. So you don't have to even kind of monitor it. It's sort of built in. But like one of the things that you need to know, and Spirit says in terms of how the shadow affects you, how does the shadow affect you? It's almost a benefit. It keeps you keeping it fresh, because the second you see somebody in that space, you reinvent it, you know, because you're the fountain. Like you're not getting your inspiration from outside sources. Your inspiration comes from within. That is like, that's why it's 10 of Pentacles. So just getting some water. Sorry, I was like, so that's where this is like, that rebellious nature in you is like, oh yeah, you know, you're gonna repurpose what I did, or, you know, take it in that direction, or, you know, whatever the heck it is. Like it just spurs you on. And so you have to understand that there's a life of its own, that your creativity takes, that, you know, may start to sort of like, you know, where people are playing with it, but then you just change, you know. It's sort of like the beauty in all of this is that you have that. And I think that there's this like, this is understood, but it's also like there's this, we're looking at a little something different. You know, when we looked at the root of what was going on with you, in terms of like how that shadow like came about, you know, we're seeing like the trauma of being overcome, the trauma of being conquered, the trauma of having somebody take something that was yours and use it and like in a thieving way. Like that's actually, no matter how that plays out, you put that story over any situation and you're going to have a phobic response to being willing to open up and share yourself. And so like we do have to like appreciate like the gravity of that wound, but we also have to like turn around and look at it and say the gravity of that wound is significant, but nothing is worse than having my creativity and my capacity to support myself with my creativity taken from me. Like that's really where this chariot and the strength, like knowing what you have and the strength that it is to like, and what it means to get you where you're going, is to sort of really understand that even though, you know, a false person can, you know, with this like expectation, like, you know, the word, I keep on hearing the word like rapacious. Somebody has to look that up. I don't know what it means, but like there can be people that are like this, you know what I mean, around and present falsely, but not really. Like, no, like that comes back to that analogy that Spirit bring through in that channel about like, you know, the game. You know, that like anyone not playing the game towards the goalpost, anyone not charting that path, you know, so for those that are going to follow, like the universe will just disqualify them like real immediately. And so, yes, what you create will have a life of its own. It will come off of the page. It will do its own thing. But to think that there's any kind of scarcity here, that's where this like miser stuff comes in. And so like one of the things we want to look at, one of the things that we want to look at here is this is shadow, you know, this is a shadow. So this is impeding your ability to prosper, because there's this is a stinginess, you know, this is a kind of like, there's not enough, you know, and that coldness, like, yeah. So we're, you know, this is where we have like, you know, prosperity blockage. Let's spend a little bit of time with this, because the ice, I'm drawn to the ice, and I don't totally know why, so I'm gonna just spend an extra minute on this. Yeah. And I had one of the candles go out, so that's okay. These two are sort of extra. You know, it's funny, the shadow work stuff, we do have to take that moment to sort of like breathe in and say, you know, and be with those moments where something that you brought into the world with such love and such care, you know, went unappreciated, or went appreciated by other, like, you know what I mean? Like indirectly, you know what I mean? Something like that. Spirit says, like, you know, we do have to kind of spend time with these moments around, where does this miser and this stingy and this lack come in when people have been Yeah, Spirit is saying, like, when other people have been like that, you know, there's something to be said for contagion, you know, and yeah, martyr. I think that, like, when it comes to this very man, like, necessity, focus, and transition, I guess that there is this aspect here that says the person that doesn't get credit is the martyr. You don't want to be the martyr. And I think that that's sort of where, when we look at this fear, you know, it's the fear of being martyred. It's, you know, where everything that you put out there is just, like, used. You know what I mean? It's the fear of being conquered, you know, having your creation kidnapped. You know what I mean? Like this is sort of contending, like, with the fact that, like, if we're real about it, if we're real about, you know, a capitalism of, like, energy exchange and comparison, if we're real about a capitalism of energy exchange and comparison, then well, you know, hold on, let me just not lose the channel because it's overwhelming. Then there's always this kind of fear that, like, you're not playing a contact sport, you're playing in the Hunger Games. If your survival and everybody else's survival is based on a fair game and, like, no one's playing that fair game, then you're participating in the Hunger Games. And it's like, who the hell wants to do that, right? So this can be, like, a real anger, like, or like the way that this manifests and you know, influences the way the shadow is influencing your life is just making you angry. It's making you angry at people. It's making you angry at your work. It's making you angry at the work of other, you know, it's causing all kinds of anger in relationship to what it means to create and what it means to be happy in creation and what it is to just be blooming. In some ways, like, entering any kind of a field of competition with something as precious as your creation is going to be dangerous, because it's always a contact sport. Whether or not that contact sport becomes violent is whether or not people are willing to step on your neck, you know, and, like, people are going to be willing to step on your neck. And so you have to decide, am I going to be willing to step on other people's necks, or am I going to stop what I'm doing, understand the nature of the game is to not play by those rules and play by the rules of those that are getting the ball to the goal, and understand that by getting the ball to the goal, it's my responsibility to chart my path forward by charting my way back. And so it's just, like, you know, it's not so much like for you to come into a better place with this is not to be angry and not to have condemnation and not to be bitter and not to say that there's, like, no safe playing field for your creation. It's to get in the field and say, every asshole that isn't playing towards the goal, the universe is going to make sure that they lose themselves on their own little corner of the field. Right? This is where you kind of have to surrender, and you have to kind of, like, understand that, like, this shadow is taking far more than it could ever give, and it's also contrary to the way that the game is played. That was the hardest part about this channel, is getting the fact that this channel is simultaneously the hardest part. I lost it again. This is really hard. You know, this is the hardest channel because it's simultaneously, like, to play the game badly is to participate in a badly played game and to have, like, all the disasters that come with that. So, like, there's no way that, like you, like, basically this reading is saying that you participate in playing the game badly by withholding, you know, by restricting the flow of information, by thinking that, like, by losing your faith in your own creative capacity as being, like, endless. So there's this moment where we have to say, okay, so are you being a miser about creation, you know, in and of itself? And that's a really difficult thing to say, but I think that that's like one of the main sort of, like, entry level points of, like, for success, is recognizing that, like, we play the game forward, you know, and we chart the way back so that other people can participate in a coherent way, and anything else is competition in a toxic way. So Yeah, the shadow here is kind of multifaceted. It's simultaneously the world where everyone's playing game badly and your participation by letting that bad game keep you from participating at all. And so we have to look at this and sort of just kind of see and say, okay, well, you know, that's what we're looking at. With the Sun card and the Knight of Cups here, how this, you know, so this is really like what's holding you back at an energetic, emotional, like frequency level even, you know, like it's holding you back. This check in your spirit, this check in your gut. Every time you go to make something, you panic and you're like, what the hell's going on? Why am I panicking? Well, one of two things. It's always going to be one of two things. If you go to make something and you panic, you're always got one of two things. You're hungry. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like you need to read or take a walk or you know, meditate. Like you have to make sure that your input and your output are copacetic. You know what I mean? And so like if you are, and you also have to consume healthy material, right? I don't know why this is coming through, but it doesn't seem to be related to shadow. But Spirit's almost saying, like, if you're at a place where you're, like, not in a good place with the creative process, where you're panicking, what are you creating from? It means whatever you're creating from isn't for you to create from, or it's not sufficient for you to create from. It's the beginning of your inquiry, not, like, where you end. You know, there's something here. I don't know why. I think there's probably one person who's listening that needed that, but I don't know why. Because it doesn't seem related to shadow. It's more process. But like the thing that Spirit is basically saying is like the creative process is something that you do with Spirit. You co-create with Spirit. Like whenever that's out of sync, you're co-creating with something that's not Spirit, you know, and then you have to further the inquiry. And so with Athlete here being about transcending physical limits, including handicaps, development of personal willpower, and strength of spirit. I think that here, you know, like this is really interesting because, you know, here you are in this little space, you know, you're, and this Athlete speaks of the body. And so I think that like we're coming back to this issue of the body or that space for you, which is sacred. You're creating space, like your little nest. And I think that you feel like, you know, there's this level of exposure with this card. And then there's this guy who's eating the house, you know. So there's this way in which, like, for you to, like, create is almost to, like, open the door, is for you to, like, reveal yourself. And there is definitely, like, without a doubt, not just a fear that comes in around, you know, having, like, some of what you create, like, taken in the wrong direction on the field. But there's also a fear that, like, this exposure will lead to some kind of like, this could be like an example of like stalking. This could be an example of, and so like, even if you create on a smaller scale, say just like at a small level, like whatever it is that you put out there is a part of yourself that someone else can consume. And once someone gets a taste for that consumption, there's a fear that they're going to be dangerous, you know, or gluttonous or manipulative, or, you know, this is by default, like giving some level of access to what otherwise would be kind of like a private, you know. And so like you have to sort of almost face your fear on a physical level of what it means to be seen and have your creativity consumed. And that's like some tough stuff right there, isn't it? Like, and whoever thinks about creativity as being consumed, right? But with the artist here, we are talking about like like, I love the way that these things are worded and I use it all the time, but like expressing a dimension of life that is just beyond the five senses, inspiring others to see life symbolically. I think these blurbs are better than the way I could articulate it. And the point here is that like Spirit is saying like that to be an artist is to be on display, is to put things on display. And to be on display, like, it does have a level of inherent risks, but right now what you've got shutting you down is less about the inherent risks and more about your fear of change and the change that could be brought into your life if like what would the exposure, what kind of change would the exposure bring? And so when we get to the nitty-gritty of like, you know, this is the current influence of your shadow, but the hidden strength of your shadow is like related to this idea that like you're afraid, based on your Ten of Pentacles giftedness, on what kind of change exposure would actually bring into your life. Like we're looking at a shadow and we're picking it apart. And so I think when we look at the hidden strengths, we're looking at strengths that you know already exist about what you have to offer, and that you already have a sense of the value of what you bring to the world. And you know that once you do put this out there without any kind of constraints or fears, like when you're out of your own way on, you know, what it means to, like, you know, just throw the ball into the field, that what you're going to see is that some of the fears that you do know the value of what you have to offer, you do get it. And it scares the crap out of you, because to succeed at that level is going to change your life. And that's the change that we fear. And so Spirit is saying, like, let's just take a look at what it is to address. By looking at the hidden strengths, we're also simultaneously addressing the strength of your fear, because that's sort of what we're looking at. So let's take a look at the hidden strengths here. Let's take a moment, and I want us to just kind of go into a place of taking some breaths, because I need some breaths. So I'm thinking you need some breaths too. You know, fear shadow work is often hard because it makes jumpy. This particular section has me kind of jumpy because it's not sadness. It's like, it's intense fear. You know, because this is like a hypervigilance, like looking like everywhere, like who's trying to hurt me, take from me, like what's going on, like. And Spirit is just like that. You're the Ten of Pentacles and the Fool and the Chariot and the Strength card and the Sun and the Knight of Cups. You're good. you know, that's a lineup that says that's a lineup that says a lot about what you have to, like where we are right now, like the hidden strengths, what you have to offer, that you're letting this keep you from, or not, you know, or that's where we have self-sabotage as a coping mechanism. Like your coping mechanism to keep you from this level of exposure that would cause change is this whole shadow around fearing having something taken. Because change, again, like this is really like coming up as being super. Your success will bring you change. This is concerning to you at a soul level, at an unconscious level. It's extremely concerning to you. And so when we look at some of this, let me actually get some more cards. I want to get more than just these. This is beautiful, by the way. Okay, so I don't know how much you guys can feel when I do these readings in terms of the energy, but they're just like the best, like relieving kind of a balm sort of a feeling, like a nice, like think about like the hottest weather and like a cool breeze came through when these cards came out. So yeah, I would think that you're hiding a lot, that you're afraid of, like the, oh yeah, so Spirit is basically saying that like relieving yourself of this fear, doing the shadow work and relieving yourself of this fear is going to like have an enormous impact, which is quite beautiful. It's wrapped up. You know, I think there's a reason that Spirit brought us into some of that territory around the physical body, and is because it's wrapped up in a lot, you know, even at the level of like, I think, you know, I said like the word capitalism at some point, like, you know, this idea of like you taking your work and something that you created and it's dangerous out there for, you know, it's so something really powerful about, acknowledging, like, you know, just how much this shuts people down, and it has had the power to shut you down. So let me just, I'm losing the channel again. Wow. I didn't know this was such a big fear. I mean, we're doing shadow work, but this is really significant. And if I laugh, it's trying to break it up a little bit. It's dense. Aries is about your motivation, your drive, your get up and go, your idea to execution, like duration of, you know, it's sort of like pace, you know, in its own way. All right, yeah, so Spirit's showing me again, like this idea of like creating, you know, to hold this torch up in the world where just kind of everything's sort of getting drowned out. Spirit is saying, but you have a boat. You know, that there's this aspect of like what you have to create in the way of art and what you have to create from being this King of Cups energy. Like you're solid, you've got a boat. But we have to look at the hidden strengths here. This solitary desert, and I'm loving this card, has like the most serene, like I love this energy so much. I could take a nap in it. You are self-sustaining. You're a light, you're a light that has its own source, its own sun. I'm seeing like someone who's walking around with their own source of sun. So it doesn't matter. Spirit is saying whatever the climate, the reason this is like desert, Spirit is saying no matter what the climate is, no matter what the weather is, no matter what your surroundings are, you have the healer within. Like you can self-heal. You can heal yourself. You can heal others. Your center is like, there's literally the sun. I'm seeing the sun. So there's like nothing that I'm seeing, fertility. So that's sunshine, that is inspiration. So basically, like, it doesn't matter what conditions you're in, you're going to be inspired by it. And that inspiration has the capacity to heal every time. And so like, this is going to be the alchemy that is your magic. You know, when you think about it, let me just sit here for a second, because man, if this channel isn't hard to hold, I don't know what is. Spirit is basically saying that, you know, the fear of having exposure around your endless fount means that you're going to be in relationships where people don't even try to give you anything because they are so sure and perceive to such a degree that you need nothing. Right? This is like when we look at like this hidden gift, like it can be presented as a huge shadow. It has a shadow effect. It has a huge shadow effect. So like one of the things Spirit is saying is like, you know, this is that whole like, I don't want to never like needing help somehow like is a connection, you know, or like self-sufficiency to a degree, you know, where you're afraid that it leads to like ultimately not being connected. Yeah, this is a hard channel to hold, because this is the imperfection. You know, I hate my imperfection. We're doing shadow work together. I might as well just like stop and take a breath. This is a hard channel to hold, which means that like the delivering the message part is like riddled with me being like, you know what I mean? I'm like stopping and starting and stopping and starting. And so I think that, let me just sit. You are a light and like a fount of inspiration in an otherwise desert environment, and the healing capacity that you have in terms of what you bring forth is so far reaching. That scares you. It scares you to look out and see like that it's a desert, and that what you're having to bring can have that much of an effect or that much of an impact, because you don't want to be responsible for the impact, you know, to a certain extent. That's true. And so when we look at like what's the hidden strength, it's the strength of the impact that you have with what you have to offer is tremendous. That's huge. And I hate those two words, but whatever. That's just what came through. And I think that that's a really good example, actually, because like sometimes the idea of holding a level of power that you don't feel ready for can be incredibly intimidating, and that might be something to pause on right there. We're back to this, we have the law of compensation and magic here, and this is where an alchemy. So this is where Spirit is basically saying like the literal law of, because the alchemy of what you're bringing into the world, because it's coming from a pure source. When I say pure source, I mean it's not, your source of inspiration is not coming from other people's, how do I put this? Your inspiration is coming from within. It's not from external sources. And because your inspiration is coming from within, and the way that you perceive like the world from that space, you're going to be compensated. This is where the playing field like isn't a playing field at all. You put in the effort, and the result will be proper compensation. The withholding with that miser card it's even withholding from your greatness. It's almost like I don't want to put my best stuff, you know what I mean? Or I don't want to put out like what's, you know, what could, there's this whole contrived, like, I can feel it, it's really tight, but Spirit is basically saying like your inspiration is coming from like this fountain within, from this purity. Like you have something that is meant to be a transmission. And and this law of compensation, you know, sort of indicates to you that you can step out of this. You are not going to be affected by this wheel. The fear of being a martyr, you know, like where you do all of this sort of like work only to sort of find that you're not compensated for it. With the empty room, you know, that's some tough stuff, but that's sort of you knowing, well, let's take a couple of cards. I'm literally having I don't even know if I should like, there's a part of me that thinks that like this is so hard to get through that I shouldn't put it up. But I think I'm going to push through with the assumption that when we get to the breakthrough, we'll all get there together. Because this is a hard part for me to see. It's like the strength of the shadow's hold and the fear is right here in this neighborhood of like the hidden strengths, which is like I'm really having a hard time to we have to look at it like this. Okay, when we think about our hidden strengths in our shadow work, you know, with the Judgment card here, it's about just like, you know, coming to the right decision about how this is perceived. When we're looking for the hidden strengths, we're trying to find the things that we're conditioned to see as weakness in a new way, to reveal like that it's actually a strength. Like that's sort of the process that we're trying to come through here. And so with the desert being about this like solitary fount of creativity and this healer within, this self-sufficiency, you know, having an isolating effect to a certain degree, but also there being this knowledge that like it's a desert and you're not experiencing desert things. And so there's this fear again. Law of compensation and magic and alchemy says that you should be able to have faith in the universe for your compensation. But somehow that's coming up as like something that would be perceived as a weakness. But it's actually a strength, and I'm having a hard time really like figuring it. But with to make equal the equator and Cancer under this creator card, being at home with the fact that that your creativity doesn't reside within a hierarchy. It can't be taken advantage of within a hierarchy. Your creativity can't be taken advantage of within a hierarchy because it doesn't. Gosh, this is the hardest thing I've ever tried to bring through. It doesn't operate in a it is not. Its nature is not hierarchical. That's not its nature. It doesn't like operate well in a hierarchy. Like, I don't know how to bring this through. Wow, I'm admitting to a really hard thing, like while I'm doing a reading. I don't know how to bring this part through. So let me just think. Okay, so if I'm lost here at the value of this gift, and the entire shadow is about concealing the value of it because of a fear of being co-opted, thievery, having that gift be something that is like where you're forced to work. Yeah, that it scares you like at a level that is paralyzing me as a reader right at this moment. And it has to do with change. Two of Swords, forbidden. You cannot proceed. Nine of Pentacles, independence. Two of Pentacles, making a choice. Sad Squirrel, despair. And the Queen of Wands. Warrior. Inspiration, warrior, queen. There's this spirit saying, you can't do this on your own. You can't get where you're going on your own. You didn't get here on your own. And you shouldn't impose on your own on others. That was hard getting that out. So the power of your gift is that it's not an on your own kind of a situation. And I think that this fear of change is fear of being in a group of other people or operating and working within a group of other people. That the exposure, that giving your gift and having your gift hit a certain level of exposure means that at a certain point you're going to be, that there are going to be influences and there are going to be interactions, and this is almost a defense of trying to do it on your own and force everybody else to do it on their own. And so the gift is that you don't have to do it on your own. You don't want to do it on your own. You want to create with others. That's the gift that's hidden here, is that you want to create with others. You want what you put out there in the world to grow and change and inspire and transform. You want that. You don't want to keep it all to yourself. It's no fun. You don't want to keep it the same. You want to constantly be having to, you want to be inspired to change, you know, by all the aspects of what it means to be working in community. So this hidden gift is that it's for everyone. That's what this to make equal is all about, is that you want to participate with your gift in community. And you want to chart the path forward, and you want to chart the path back to the extent that you can. And you want to participate in sharing openly and having that sharing being appreciated. And so your hidden strength in all this is that this is a very social gift that you have to give. And that you should you know, look at this fear as being, yeah, something like when we put the fear in context, and then we see that those on the playing field that are not playing the game for the liberation of everybody and everyone's, you know, evolution, that they're disqualified like really quickly, right? And so once you understand that and you begin to relax on that, knowing that that's a cup of concern over the benefit. And the benefit is in being able to create from that endless fountain without anything like messing up the flow, without anything interfering with what it is for you to do this. And for you to do so in community, with community, you know, in a it's contact sport, you know. So let's look at embracing this and integration, because that like took a really long time for us to get to a place where I could like get a hold of that. That was like really, really intense. I hope that the catharsis like reaches through the screen in the way that I could feel the break here on this end. So let me just pull that out. Okay. So what I want to do right now is not say let's think. Let's take a look at, yeah, let's embrace this shadow. I want to get a message from Spirit on what it means for you to embrace this. What's the process of embracing this for you, beginning to integrate this? Spirit says part of it is just kind of putting things into context. Part of things is understanding the end goal for yourself and for others. Look at that. You see clearly now. A rebirth is assured. Okay. The bottom of the deck being life is a mystery. There's a tremendous release in surrendering to this notion that the source of your inspiration is source, like, and it's inexhaustible, and that you don't have to understand like what, you know, what's going to happen with what you create at any given moment. You don't have to it's a lot like having a baby. You know, you nurture something, you bring something into the world, you labor over it, you nurture it, you guide it, and at a certain point it's going to take on a life of its own. And that's really this mystery, you know, like participating in the mystery is being able to participate in life, not knowing where it's going to lead, and being able to create into the world, not knowing what's going to be done with that creation. You just do it for, like, you participate in creation as a form of prayer and communion with the divine. That's what you're doing. If it's not that, you stop yourself. You know what I mean? Because then you're going to be creating something that smells bad, you know? But so, like, once we see this clearly, like once we understand that it's a prayer, you know, this is a sacred act. This is something that we do for ourselves and benefits others from a place of generosity, from natural giving, which doesn't have stops like on it, you know? And so with this, you see clearly now, Spirit says, like, you know, as you understand that, you know, the true purpose of what you're doing is to share. You know, the true purpose of what you're doing is to understand that no matter what you put out there, your rebirth and birth and rebirth and birth and rebirth and birth cycle is never ending. This is an ongoing, it doesn't stop. So anytime you create something, even if something gets saturated because it, you know, people start playing with it, it's a ball, it's contact sport, you're going to still sort of get, you know, by the time it comes around and you're like, ew, what's that? Boom, you're back again. You're doing something totally different. It spurs you in a new direction. Like, this is, you know, this is something that you can put your faith in and your trust in. What if tomorrow everything I did becomes like no longer interesting? Well, your faith and trust is in your ability to resurrect every time. And so that's like a peace. You know, it's a grounding. That's like, oh, I can, you know, I can relax with this a little bit because no matter what happens, I will be able to reinvent myself. If I get boring, I'll reinvent myself. If the platform goes away, I'll reinvent myself. If nobody gets the book, and you know, I just say, I'll you know, there's this way in which Spirit says, like, whenever something doesn't work out, you reinvent yourself into a new, you know, you take everything you learned and you put it into something new, and you do it again and again and again. And that is the faith that you can have that faith very solidly, and you can count on that very solidly as like a constant and an absolute. And that's where you get your sense of security. You don't get your sense of security from managing how everything is going and making sure there's not like one, like, you know, you get your sense of security not from management, from your own faith and your ability to constantly reinvent. And with believing yourself and life is speeding up, Spirit is saying, you know, going into the world with this confidence, going into the world, understanding what your purpose is and what your why. You have to understand the why of it, or else you're going to lose your way every single time. Once you understand the why of it and you're really believing yourself, like, this is when things will pick up and really move in a new direction. And if you have given up on trying to control every facet of everything and everybody and everything, oh my God, you know what I mean? Whenever you give up on that, you bring this gentle touch to the creative process, which is suddenly the creative process is your friend. Suddenly the creative process has ease. Suddenly the creative process has joy and delight. And that is what it means to embrace your shadow, is to understand that by understanding your purpose, you know, by understanding that you can count on where your security actually lies, you know, and that this is going to generate, you know, the kind of movement forward that brings ease into the process of creation. That's being in alignment, and that's playing the game for the goalpost and not just for yourself, right? And so now we're just going to go into I did this with group number 1, so we're going to do it with group number 2 as well, which is just our kind of like, you know, when as a group, if we're all sitting here and we're all doing this shadow work together and we're all having this moment of like, oh yeah, this, we could come into a place of agreement, call, you know, and call in energies that will be helpful in that place of agreement. So what I always say about that is, like, all like prayer, spell work, I think it's the same thing to me. You have to sort of like willingly participate. You can listen to it and decide like whether or not you want to willingly participate afterwards. But if you listen to it and you decide you want to willingly participate, it's a nice thing. You know, it's just, I think it's a really nice thing that we can create for ourselves here. Tantric Journey is an interesting one to come. What? Look at this. Do you see these two? Okay, somebody please tell me what's going on right now. Realization. I don't know what this realization is, but it's an interesting thing. What Spirit is kind of showing me is this notion that this is a blockage on creativity, but it's also a blockage on love, hugely, because falling in love and being in love is a creative act. And when we are so busy trying to manage how we're being perceived by a lover and how that lover is, like managing their perception of us and how they perceive us with others and what that means and how it's doing. And, when we stop short on the fountain of love and creativity and creating a relationship because we're so worried about who might else be taking this or having this, or who might talking to your person and getting your love that you're supposed to have when you created this with them, and blah 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 blah, and what it means to have an open heart and to go into things open-heartedly, like with community, and to go into things open-heartedly like with friendship, go into things open-heartedly with romantic love. These are creative acts, and it's interactive creative, like it's being creative with others, your interactive creativity, like. And so this realization around, not wanting change, not wanting to have to create with others. Spirit is saying you want to create with others. You want to create with others in relationship. You want to create with others in creativity. You want to create with others in community. You want your work to be valued, and you want people to be inspired and create from that inspiration. Once you let go of all the reins, around what happens with your creativity, then you don't have any reins on your creativity. And that's when what you're passionate about. Let's read the Tantric Journey. I was going to do this all and I think it'll be a little looser. But the Tantric Journey here says the frequency of the Tantric Journey helps us to unlock the hidden knowledge and wisdom that we intrinsically hold about how to reach a state of wholeness and completion through our sensual experiences with ourselves and others. Right now we have this blockage around just ourselves, but when we allow the sensual, where did that just go? Yeah, sensual experiences. Art is a very, creating art for others and having others participate in that art is a very sensual experience in and of itself. It just naturally is, which is why creating can be kind of terrifying, because you don't know who's going to take it, you know what I mean? And have an experience with something that you made, But Spirit is saying that the beauty here is that when you stop trying to care what people are doing with the experience that you made, and you just allow for this to experience yourselves, with another and how they're experiencing what you experience, to let go of how the management, to just have allow your passion to lead you, and allow that passion to lead you into creativity with other people in romantic love, creating romantic love, creating a romantic life, creating a romantic career. That romanticism, that's a creativity that Spirit is inviting you to unleash, right? And so let's do it. I'm going to read these out as something that we're calling in, So if you want to agree with me, you can go ahead and agree with me, and it makes it more powerful. It amplifies it. So I'm calling in, having everybody take a deep breath. Okay. Calling in the frequency of the Tantric Journey to help us unlock the hidden knowledge and wisdom that we intrinsically hold about how to reach a state of wholeness and completion through our sensual experiences with ourselves and others. We call in the frequency of passion to remind us that beneath every intense emotion lies the hidden gem of insight, balance, and calm, assisting us in finding the balance within this intensity, moving us from chaos to the calm of its core, where we can let its long-lasting wisdom fill us up. And we call in the frequency of romantic love to support our journey to feel whole and complete through the experience of reflection of a conscious lover. And why not do this one on the back too? And calling in the frequency of realization to support the internal process of becoming aware of our heart-centered truth, as well as the external process of becoming our highest expression in this world. So group number 2, may you be free of having to worry about how your creativity is going to be received. May you be free of having to wonder about how you will be compensated for your creativity. And may you be free from feeling like your creativity can ever be used against you in any way, to conquer you in any way. May your creativity be free. And welcome in that change of discovery and what it means to be discovered and to experience yourself in that. So pile number 2, I'm going to leave it there. That's today's shadow work. I like this idea of doing shadow work together. If you like it, maybe we can make it something that we do like once every so often. There's something to be said for being in these spaces as a community and as a group. So, all right, pile number 2, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that was helpful. It's always such an honor to do these readings. Okay, part number 3. For those of you that chose the zebra, let's go ahead and begin your reading. So part number 3, I did not, I did part number 1 and 2 on one day, and I had to step away because it was pretty intense. And so we're coming into this, first of all, we're working with the energy of the Morrigan. This is just something, again, this is between the last 2 readings, part 1 and part 2, or group 1 and group 2. And this one, we have the energy of the Morrigan with us. And so if you're picking group number 3, there's something to that for you. So let's go ahead and begin to look at this shadow of yours that wants to reveal itself to us, kind of come into this picture. And your group, more than the other groups, very much feels like the shadow has a personification, a specific energy. So let's take a look and see what this is. The other 2 groups, you know, these were like shadow issues and we were in shadow realms, and this feels very much like an energy. So let's take a look and see what this is. Let's meet your shadow. Wow. This is really interesting. The reason that this is interesting, and I don't know for sure, we have to look, because again, when I'm channeling these messages, I don't even know what's, like, I don't remember them. I don't retain any of the information until after I come back and listen to them. And so I have a sneaky suspicion, and you saw me shuffle. I mean, I'm hoping that was obvious. I have a little bit of a sneaky suspicion that we had these 2 cards or something very similar to these cards come out in group number 1 or number 2, and I'd have to actually like look, and I haven't. So I'll put a note in the comments to try and sort of clear this up. But the Lady of Masks coming up with the Leper King and the Mother of Creation as like this introduction to your shadow. So the first thing I want to say about your shadow is a little bit shifty. It's not this one's kind of sneaky. All right, let me get some more on this, because there's a lot of information coming through. Let me see if I can narrow this a little bit. Because pile number 3, again, your energy, the energy feels very much like a presence. And part of this energy of the shadow is to prod you along in a way that feels like opposition. But there's a lot to this, so let me focus and just grab. Whoa, that's interesting with patience here. But this is going to be fun to get into, I'll tell you that much. So your shadow is a part of yourself. Okay, let me just move these along. The overall energy of your shadow is, let me just listen. This is what keeps you from creating in a way that can like set you up for life, I'll be honest with you. It's also what keeps you, like, and when I say creating, I'm talking about creating in relationships, creating something to bring into the world, and it's an interactive process. And so with this suppression, with schizophrenia coming out, like, we're going to spend some time with this because this is a really interesting shadow. I'm kind of shocked that this is your shadow, because it's sort of a gift. And let me focus. This is going to take a little while. This is a little harder to bring a translation through on, because it keeps you from interacting, it keeps you from connecting. The Leper King here with bravery, self-discipline, and faith. This is going to be related to a false concept of God. And with the mother of creation, motherhood, ferocity, and creation, this false God's influence on you. And like, that's a really interesting way that that's coming through, is to sort of keep you from any true knowledge of yourself. And so when we look at how this shadow operates, it's going to operate in the ego in a very specific way. And I'm a little creeped out, yeah, because it seems like it's going to operate in the ego around the concept of love. And when I say I'm a little creeped out, it's because what I'm seeing here in terms of patience, and I'm also going to grab the miser and sorrow and laziness and burden, is that the burden that this creates for you is a not enough, you know, is like a lot of grieving and just not being able to sort of take these mirrored pieces and galvanize them and make them into anything sort of in a spirit, you know, anything that's going to, your guides are saying your life is so fractured. And that seems like a very harsh thing to come through, but like the fractured life here as the burden, it's keeping you from really having a clear picture of like who you are and what you're capable of in the world, and especially what it means to share your energy, share your gifts, open up and be able to really take everything. See, this is you with your internal world, and to have this internal world be something that you share, and take the burden of sorry, this is going to be hard to bring through. The burden of creation is like all on your own, and it's actually supposed to be a very interactive process with you. So the transformation here, the letting go in the moment to moment, you've had trouble fully, like this transformation is actually speaking to me as like trouble with the transformation process. Trouble with the process of transforming from child into like young adult, and then trouble with the process of transforming from young adult into adult. Like your guides are saying that, you know, part of the shadow is like this real, and they're saying it almost like a disease. It's like not ease, like lack of ease around change and changing and allowing yourself to change. And so that's what we're going to be really looking at here, is like the shadow is showing up as not allowing you to change, you stopping yourself from changing, you not being able to connect. And that with the self-discipline, the bravery and faith, your guides are saying you have so much bravery and so much self-discipline and so much faith, but it's to what use? With this moment to moment and this suppression of the schizophrenia. I want to get more cards on this, because you know, what this really tells me is you bridge two worlds. This card really, you know, and this to me is the space between the two worlds. So if you look at this card here with the schizophrenia, you see that this person is bridging these two worlds, and they're sort of like basically hanging on with this, that this suppression here is the strain, and this space strikes me as the space between these two worlds, and then this not being able to sort of talk about this, feel good about this, communicate about this, and feeling connected to all of these things in secret, you know, and this is giving you some level of sustenance too, which is very interesting. But this fear of the label, this fear of being misperceived, this fear of not being understood, and this fear of having like no place between these two worlds that you can confidently express yourself from, that's playing a really big role in the way that you feel that you can show up. And we have a fly or something. That's like some energy. That might be for someone who works with Loki, just letting you know there's a little bit of like a hey. So if that's an energy that you work with, they're kind of chiming in to say like, yeah, yeah, you're having some real problem allowing this to exist. And so we're going to pull some cards on it. But, you know, as far as your moment to moment struggles go and your difficulties, letting go in terms of these transformation processes, these cycles. With that Patience card, again, I'm seeing the cycles of the moon. Not allowing this free flow in your cycles, trying to keep things contained, and it has a lot to do with hiding. So that's sort of like the general representing of like the overall energy of your shadow self. Your shadow self shows up as living in a kind of, your guys are saying dream state here, that like, it's both how you process your sorrow and how you feel it's safe to experience your, this is making me cry. This is like the way that you manage all of this pain is very much, you know, because the pain of like holding everything to yourself and the pain of holding this wealth of knowledge and these abilities to yourself. And like, I'm seeing like, you know, growing old with this, you know, there's something to be said for like trying to stop the cycles, these transformations in their tracks, because every time you transform, there's some gift that you get that's hard to manage, you know? And so the sorrow of what it means to sort of like be with, like I'm hearing withholding and be withheld, has led to this kind of like relationship with everything sort of compartmentalized and fractured, and progress and what you find to be pleasurable and what you find to be sustaining and what you is, your guides are saying, you know, this is, they're like, you want to participate with life. And the outsider status does create a kind of, yeah, see, it's like, I'll show you, especially with the schizophrenia card here, with the burden and tuning in. This is a giftedness, and I really think this card represents you a lot. And I wouldn't think of these as scary faces, because they're not, you know, especially if you do have an ability to see between worlds and sort of interact between worlds. Like you will begin to understand like the dimensional nature of this, and that it doesn't scare you. But maybe that's kind of the issue, is that it doesn't scare you. And I mean, this is funny. This is a new deck. That this card is called Schizophrenia is really interesting. Because we're going to address that in a second. But for this to be a gift and not a burden, it has to exist out in the open for yourself. Like, you have to look at this out in the open. And so I think we're going to actually concentrate, when we look at the roots of your shadow, I want to, the lack of like love and attention has caused you to create a kind of like feedback loop. I'm not, with this Lady of Masks as being on the bottom of the deck, the nature of your shadow is that it's hiding you from people. Your motive in hiding from people is not like some bad, fake nonsense, like nothing. Your motive is like not feeling safe with this suppression of being between worlds. And again, back to this, the capacity of your ability to create, your moment to moment is so busy handling this and trying to even find a way for yourself to see yourself clearly in this without some horrendous stigma. And again, this is a very powerful reading, because we're going to come right back to that. I wanted to spend like a little bit more time with this, because Spirit is basically saying that, you know, part of the reason for this suppression, this having to show up in ways that, you know, are contrived in order to cope with this feeling different, having to have this bravery and this self-discipline about hiding this, and then having that really eat into your creative capacity, wanting to stop transformations and your own personal transformations and cycles in their track, is because you're holding yourself, you're holding complete and total control. This letting go card is not necessarily about you know, holding on to the past, you know, I wish this would have happened. No, this letting go card is really speaking that you're holding on for dear life to try and hide whatever the situation is. And so it's like I'm seeing somebody who's like manually holding themselves together constantly, and constant monitoring. So we're going to very much get into this. All right, I want to look at the roots a little bit. I want to look at the root of this shadow. There's a lot of cards I want to pull on the shadow in particular, but I'm going to look at the root. you know, every time I'm doing a YouTube video and it's not like a one-on-one reading, but like something that I'm putting out into the world, like I always get a little bit frightened when we're in territory where, like, you know, the channel wants to come through like bright and strong and bold. And I worry about who's watching and what they might be projecting, you know what I mean? So I have to sort of take this moment to say, if you are dealing with anything that is beyond your control, it doesn't matter what it is, addiction, a relationship, a circumstance, if there is something that you look at and you say, this is beyond my control, I'm not enough to handle this, you know, this is overpowering me, it's overpowering my ability to function, or anything along the lines of bigger than me and causing like breakdowns or breaking apart or shutdowns. There's like a need to go and seek help. And that's, especially with my American audiences, like that's really hard to tell somebody to go and seek help when you live in a place where there isn't. Like, and there are severe barriers to a lot of people seeking help. So with schizophrenia, it's like an interesting thing because I think that this is a huge asset and yeah, so now so this is for everyone's conception. And so when that whole preamble that I just did, you know, about like, if something's bigger than you, then you need to reach your hand out. I always feel like that's a hard thing to tell people to do, because if you reach your hand out with something that is a little bit abnormal spiritually, you're going to have a hard time getting the help that you need. And so I do want to try and toe the line between like, get the help that you need and understand that if the help that you need is insufficient, or if it's not help, if it's not help that helps, some of what we're going to be looking at is just that. And so the disclaimer is, this is not for mental health, but it can be helpful to sort of take a spiritual view and apply it to certain things, and then make decisions from there that are inclusive of like spiritual help and not spiritual help. I hate having to do that, but I just had to do that. Okay, so back to what we're talking about. And the reason that I hate having to do that is because, you know, just as a reader, you know, these readings are not a substitute for mental health. But I think the best thing that you could do for your mental health is to have like a very active spiritual practice, both things together. One doesn't like deny the other and one doesn't avoid the other. Like they both can exist together. And especially with this schizophrenia is a very hard thing for me to speak to right now. And I'm surprised that this card is in here. But as a person who has a giftedness where I see spirits, I hear spirits, I see and hear and know things, but ahead of time, like I can go, my list is really extensive because an oracle has a very comprehensive set of gifts. This is all going to fall into the category of schizophrenia. So like, this is an interesting thing for me to talk about, because I think that a lot of people who have like very normal gifts in the psychic arts, like are put in a situation where it's like, you can either deny your gift and claim mental health, or you could admit to your gift and be categorized as somehow crazy. And these things are problematic, which is why we have this suppression here, and why we have this trying to hide who you are, and that being a full-time job impacts your ability to connect with others and to create in any way, shape, or form. And so the shaman and the creator coming out is so good. I love when spirit shows up, and like, especially if I'm channeling and I'm in the middle of like, I was just channeling and I'm like, spirit, don't take me down this road. Spirit, don't take me down this road. You know, and then spirit is like, we're going down this road. And I'm glad that it is, because the shaman and the creator here is exactly what I'm trying to avoid talking about. And since this is shadow work and we're doing mystic, spirit is in favor of me talking about this. You know, I do see, okay, I'm going to talk about it, and this is the help that I'm bringing in. I'm sort of like sputtering because I want to talk about this. Spirit wants me to talk about this, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe I can go through and Google a bunch of resources for people so that if anybody finds themselves like, you know, over their head or out of control related to this particular gift, that they can go and call the 800 numbers. Now, I know for damn sure, yeah, like I am positive that those numbers aren't going to get you as much help as you probably need in a situation where you're like, I'm desperate. Because those like any help helps. And so I'm always going to say, go to any help. It's going to help. But at the same time, I'm hoping that the work that we do here today, while not being a substitute, can help you begin to get a hold of some of this. Because I'm going to go into some weird territory right now. I just hope that, yeah. You know, and I hate saying the truth, you know, which is that those numbers can only get you so far, you know, without a system of healthcare that, you know, you're able to just go to the doctor without having to incur like horrendous debt. It's a bad situation. And you know, I wish personally that there was more that I could do to help, but even I have to have really strong boundaries that say like, I can only give so much. And right now, like what I'm able to cover in the reading in terms of like how to work with some of this stuff is as much as I can give in this way. And that's a hard thing to have to, you know, cope with myself. But I think also like, I can't help, the numbers will be insufficient, and I don't know what to do about that. And so maybe some of what Spirit wants to bring through in this reading is about that. I'm having a shadow experience just bringing this through. This entire reading, like last time too, was like a little bit hard. With the angel of memory and the angel of empathy, this is about remembering who we are. And empathy is about being able to see the experience of pain in another as our own in a certain kind of a way. So let me just look at the time because we're 20 minutes in and I feel really on shaky ground with this. I don't want to talk about mental health issues in a reading, but this is what I'm talking about here. Okay, fine. Pile number 3. We're going to keep on going. We're going to keep like moving forward. So I think I brought up in another reading that like, oh God, this is really hard for me to push through. I'm just conferring with my guides because like the creator card, the shaman card, the mystic, spiritual giftedness, there's no place for it in this world. You know, that connection between the conscious and the unconscious mind and making sense of it. I was on my walk with my dog this morning and I was actually thinking about this very topic, just sort of like thinking around it. So I guess the Morrigan, who's been sort of like hovering, you know, is sort of like kind of coaxing me, like she's sort of like letting me think about this. And I was thinking about it in terms of myself, and I was thinking, I kind of like chuckling to myself that like, you know, even if my giftedness would be, and my giftedness would absolutely 100% be in the category of schizophrenia, like not even, there's no question about that. Like I've always known that. And I've known that since I was a little kid. But what happens with me, and I think that this is probably why I'm the person to speak, you know, from this position. What's always happened with me since I was little is whatever things that I was perceiving that nobody else was perceiving, things that I was seeing that no one else was seeing, things that I was interacting with, you know, in one way or another that like were not visible or accessible to anybody else, would self-confirm. And so since I personally know that the stuff that goes on in my unconscious mind that filters in and finds its way into like my consciousness, and that doesn't happen for other people, it's a type of synesthesia, I think, it's self-confirming. So, you know, things like I'll see something that is going to happen and then it happens. Like, so I don't have to ask myself, is this mental health? Because that self-confirming nature of my abilities sort of keeps me in check about, you know, my own self-esteem and my own self-concept. And I personally have been hiding my psychic abilities my entire life. Right? And so I was thinking about this in terms of like religion, and when I was little and I was in the church and I was thinking about these conversations with like, you know, youth pastors and things like that, and how I always used to like look at the church clergy and anybody who was sort of like a spiritual leader and think to myself like how lucky that they were that they don't have to face the demons, you know, like literally like face to face, that they don't have to actually like learn how to negotiate with these things and learn what they are and understand how, you know, the greater system works and, you know, work within it. And it's a lot of upside down kind of a stuff. But basically, like, you know, what I discovered in my journey, which is largely hidden, let's just be straight, and clear, you know, my journey with this mysticism and this shamanism and the creator and being able to create out of this space and having this be my area of giftedness and having to keep it a secret my whole life. I was simultaneously like healthy enough to mask all of this, and also able to see it self-confirm so that I knew that there was something going on that I could count on that wasn't just me going wrong. And all of that speaks to this dimension of life that it exists, that there's a shutdown. You're not allowed to be like that. You're not allowed to have this. You know, if you do have it, you have to learn how to control it and figure it out on your own, because there's no mentor and there's no one who's going to teach you. You know, if you're like young enough to like have this stuff happening, like, you know, where you're able to like look at, oh gosh, this is hard bringing through. But like when I was young again, and I'm like thinking about like how all of these religious people, they were having faith by choice. They had faith by choice. Their interactions with the supernatural were always a choice. It was always something that they were willing to do. And I think what happens with schizophrenia is it's a type of mechanism between the conscious and the unconscious mind where you don't have a choice, where there isn't a free will about what you know, what you understand, and what you're able to perceive. And if you can't make sense of it, what you're going to do is project really terrifying things in the direction of whatever is chaotic and not supposed to be here. And then you can develop a kind of like battle with it. And that's where the dysfunction and the draining and the exhaustion and like not being able to be in life kind of comes into play. But if you're able to sort of like understand that there are things that you see that others can't see, that there are things that you hear that others can't hear. And if you're able to sort of dance with it a little bit, make it work for you a little bit, you know, that's why I do this. Honestly, I make it work for me. And so I'm sharing all this stuff about myself, because when we have this empathy here card here, this is what Spirit's sort of saying, like, you know, to have, to bring my own like stuff into it, because I work as a psychic and everything that I've ever done has like taken all of this stuff that like falls into the realm of like not cool, like not okay. And for me, it's like, yeah, it self-confirms, you know, I'm able to like, you know, see how all this stuff works together, like checks and balances, you know, I've done my own like double blind, like I've done it, you know what I mean? Enough to tell you that there is something going on out there. And if there's not a proper way to manage it, it can get really ugly really fast. And that's why, you know, if you really need help because it's that unmanageable, then there are resources with those 800 numbers that you can go to seek help. And it will, like, the help will help. Beyond that, I'm talking about beyond the critical, I can't control the situation and it's affecting my day-to-day life. Anything beyond that, let me just rephrase that. Anything that's like affecting your day-to-day life that you can't control, the help will help. And it will at least position you to the point where I'm trying to speak to you from here, which is, how do you coexist with this in a way where you're making it work for you, where you have a harmony about what it is, and where you recognize that like these are traits that come through genes that were really valuable in the ancient world. And they were really valuable for our ancestors who required that connection between the unconscious and that conscious mind in order to sort of be able to bridge the gap of like, you know, I just think it's an important, beautiful gift and quality that if it is embraced, which I've embraced it for myself, and I think others can embrace it for themselves, beyond like critical crisis and into how do you work with it, that's where we are right now. And so I think that the roots of your shadow might be this incredible creator, shaman, mystic, angel of memory, and right hand of empathy. Empathy is like what's left of these traits, like what's been permitted of these traits, you know what I mean? Like, there are ways in which we find them socially acceptable, and we can call ourselves like an empath. But if you actually take this road all the way, the truth of what these gifts are able to do in terms of like our like perception and bringing in like really interesting connections and working with unseen forces, that's what those gifts were. And so, you know, what was a boon like to a family, you know, a family that had a child with these abilities used to be considered like, not always, you know what I mean? Because we're talking about the last couple hundred years, you just get burned alive, like, or, you know, cast out into the wilderness. But, you know, previous to that, you know, this was valued, highly, highly, highly valued, and highly sought after, and considered like something to be proud of and something to nurture, and a gift to nurture. And these are giftedness to nurture. And so instead of nurturing these gifts, we have the exact opposite, which is like, how do we shut them down? AKA, how do we shut you down? And so I'm bringing a lot of myself in, but I guess that's what we're doing right now. So what I want to do is look at the current influence of your shadow, because what we're talking about, it toes the line. You know what I mean? And, so long as, all right, let me keep going, because I mean, I'm finding this to be very hard reading, very specifically because of fears about stepping on toes or something. It's kind of a strange thing. Let me go ahead and get a sip of water, and I want to look at the root. I want to see how this is affecting your life. Yeah, I want to see if it's out of control or not, basically. How is this affecting your life? There's a lot coming through, because I think that the person I'm talking to, this Leper King, again, this like discipline over abilities that aren't supposed to be there. I'm feeling a church tie. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm getting that like churchy feeling sort of before, when I came through with this, like thinking about church leaders and being like, you guys are able to make a choice. Like, you're like cute, you know what I mean? Like, and so whatever this church influence is making you feel like, these are like things to fear and things to hate yourself over, and these connections that you have to these other realms, like these are wrong and these are evil, and you have to hide this. And again, like that's this is a level of self-control here and self-discipline with the Leper King, that is like, all you can do is manage day to day. All you can do is manage. And the transformation card here, you know, it speaks to me, not necessarily about transformations, but about your gifts upgrading. And so, you know, the gifts would have been really strong around puberty. And so like every time you go to like upgrade your gifts, again, menopause is going to be a really strong time for your giftedness as well. And I don't know why the feminine is coming through, but it is for someone. That doesn't mean that everybody here is, but there's something there. There's this way so every time your gifts are getting ready to upgrade, like you freak out because you're like, I don't want to deal with this. This is always so hard. And the truth of the matter is your guide saying, you know, it sucks. It really does suck that there's no place for that in your world. And your guide is saying there's no place for, your guide's saying, this is the Morgan. The Morgan's basically saying there's not even a place for women, like generally. So like, so don't feel bad if this type of magic, there's no place for it in the world. It's a type of magic that comes from the earth, and she says comes from the womb. And that doesn't mean, she's saying like, she always, like gods and goddesses are always like, no one's ever talking about gender. So like, why do we even have to, but we are talking about energies. So, you know, in terms of energies, like, you know, the sky god, like that's okay. You can play with that all day long. But the earth goddess, you know, the womb, that magic. So there's sky god magic, and then there's earth womb magic. And earth womb magic, she's saying, is just illegal. It's illegal. You know, that's something that we have to think about. And I always say, like, you know, I this is in my course that I'm creating, and I've said it in other readings, you know, the darkness is when you close your eyes and you look out. There's nothing evil about that. Evil is something else. And so, you know, when we think about womb magic, we're talking about darkness magic. It's not evil. It's womb magic. You know, stuff that happens in the dark. You know, growth that happens without people being able, you know, where we can't see it. You know, mysteries like unfolding. So that there's no place for you to evolve in this way. Your guides are saying, yeah, but you're breaking through, which is why we're having this moment with your Page of Wands and the Four of Wands. We're about to be able to, your guides are saying the celebration and the completion here is this your willingness to sort of allow these gifts to mature and to allow this transformation to take place around your self-concept. So the way that this is actually influencing your current life is it stops you from ever finishing anything. You know, so I'm seeing these cards as upside down, even though they're not. The Morrigan is showing me that the cards coming out in the upright with the King of Pentacles, we're talking about how it's keeping you from getting established. And there's a number of reasons why it's keeping you from getting established. If your giftedness, if your creativity, if you're a creator, if your art is spirituality, if you're gifted in the spiritual arts, there's no center for that. And I can tell you right now, you are gifted in the spiritual arts if you have this issue with being between two worlds and having it be something that is like significant enough that it's who you are. And so canceling that out is canceling out you. So the way that it's manifesting in your life is it's making it impossible to complete anything. And I want to see why. And Spirit's saying because of fear, you know, anybody gets close and, you know, oh, okay, let's like take a look at that in 1 second. So I'm going to take a look at, you know, the current influence of your shadow right now, like how it's affecting your decisions and relationships, self-perception. And right off the bat, we have like a problem showing up all the way, which I knew, but let's take a look and see what that is with the mature woman. Okay. Yeah, it has to do with your growth, coming into yourself, really being like fully you. And it's almost like your guides are saying, like, your inability to come out and be fully you in any meaningful way. And there's comorbidities too. So anybody who's neurodivergent at all, you're part of this, you know, because you know, schizophrenia is a type of neurodivergence, honestly. Like that's a good way of putting it. But if you're somewhere on the spectrum, the neurodivergent spectrum, it means like normie, or let's see, what's the word for it? Not neurodivergent. You're just not going to fit in with a world that demands like a certain type of how you're allowed to be. So this is for like anyone who finds themselves just like with a neurodivergent perspective that doesn't like, you know, necessarily like, doesn't jive with the norm. And so with this unexpected income on the bottom of the card, this is speaking to me about exchange. You getting an equal and fair amount of exchange for your what you put out there, what you have to offer, what you represent, the type of art that you are talented as. With the mature woman, meaning, you know, this is speaking about this transformations in your life, the cycles in your life, allowing yourself to grow and mature and transform and change. When I talk about this not letting go, because this is this letting go in this moment to moment. This is saying every moment you're kind of like holding on to control. And like these transformations are difficult because once a cycle ends and a cycle begins, your gifts are upgrading. And every time your gifts upgrading, you have to contend with this, am I crazy? Or are people going to think I'm crazy? Or, you know, what does it mean to be like this in the world? That like this doesn't exist, or you're not allowed to be like this, or, you know, if you're like this, like you have to hide it from even yourself, or it can only show up in these certain ways. The number of ways that these gifts are suppressed in so many people, I don't even like, I feel kind of passionate about this cause, I'll be honest with you. I haven't been able to, I'm surprised that this is coming up in these cards, because this is something that drives me kind of crazy, I'll be honest with you. We're all in the same collective, we're swimming in the same school of fish here, and whoever's in this pile, this is going to be my pile as well. The fear about finishing is for you actually a fear of exposure, and the fear of growing up is a fear of you being yourself. You're afraid of yourself. So your shadow is, I am afraid of myself. I'm not allowed to be like this. I'm not allowed to exist in this way. I have to spend every moment managing, you know, these things so that no one can ever see that I exist in this way. And every time I have a transformation in my life or my gifts upgrade, I have to shut down. That's this, you know, and about you, and how is it influencing your life? It's making it very hard for you to establish yourself. It's making it hard for you to show up all the way. And it's making it hard for you to accept growing up, or, you know, becoming, you know, as you get older, the pathway to maturity with this Lover's card is meant to compensate you for all of the hard work that went into, that goes into sort of like managing these things. And so the way that this shadow is challenging you is basically trying to keep you from maturing. And it's you trying to keep you from maturing. And that keeping you from maturing is also keeping you from compensation. So we're looking at this like very clearly. We're taking some deep breaths right now. I just want to hear what Spirit wants to say. You know, I want to see what Spirit wants to say about this stuff because, yeah, it's keeping you from maturing. You know, and Spirit is saying because, you know, part of this is like maturing in your gifts. These gifts that you have, these abilities that you have are allowed to exist in the realm of imagination. If the realm of imagination is only allowed to be accessed by children, then it's going to be hard for you to let yourself grow up. And if the only way that you can interact with your gifts is through play, then it's going to be hard for you to do like anything that doesn't feel like play also. Like doing things that don't feel like you're in a playful mode or playing is also going to feel like being taken away from yourself, because so much of who you are is playing in the imaginary realms. It's not playing in the imaginary realms. For you, it's very much like doing the work of being born a mystic and a shaman and the creative stuff that comes from that. This is the root. The root of your shadow is who you are. Shaman, mystic, creator. You're gifted in the psychic arts. Anything else is going to be not your area of giftedness. If you're forced to work outside of your area of giftedness, work is going to feel like slavery. You're not going to want to finish anything if it means being that by finishing something it reveals what your giftedness is to the world when you've spent so much time trying to suppress it. Even if your vocation is in the psychic arts, the amount of suppression that has gone into I am not allowed to be me makes it hard for you even to succeed in the psychic arts without having it feel like there's some vestige of this Leper King energy is, again, that self-discipline, and that is being used to like manage everything, like, you know, keep the mask on around this to a certain degree. You know, the faith is something that you don't have a choice over, and we're going to look at that in a second. And the bravery is just like, it's brave to be you. It's brave to like walk around and you're seeing a movie that people are like actively in that they don't know about, that's going on behind the scenes, and you have to sort of kind of like poker face the whole thing. Depending on like how like it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. This is a group 3. We are looking at a spectrum everywhere from like neurodivergence and the giftedness popping up and, you know, through there, to like very extreme where like if you are having trouble with like managing anything, the help will always help. Will it cure you? Will it make it all better? You know, will it lead to like liberation from the problem of? The help will help. It'll help you get sort of like steady. And then beyond that, and we're going to look at this right now, is what we need to look at. And we're going to look at 2 things. What does the shadow want from you? And what is the hidden strength of the shadow? Once we know that, we can talk about what it means to integrate it. But right now we have to fix your fear of yourself. You know, your fear of who you are, so that you can go boldly and be compensated. And by compensation, we're talking about energy exchanges, where, you know, what you put out there is then valued by someone else and it comes back in, you know, in a loop. So it's not just about like compensation money, it's about compensation. You know, you deserve love, you deserve interaction. And if you can't show up as yourself, then you're really not being able to get those needs met. If you have to wear a mask, then the person that people are responding to is the mask, and you're not getting your need to be seen met. Now, are you allowed to exist without, say, like, you know, and this is really this moment of like talking about yourself and what you really do and who you really are and how you really perceive things and like what you see going on, is going to like put you into the camp of like, she's schizophrenic. You know what I mean? And there's all kinds of shame with that. And so we're going to take a different look at that. First, let's see what your shadow is. Your shadow is a gift. We're going to see what your shadow wants from you. And I'm going to use these cards here. Because the Leper King, again, is also like, I'm different. If anybody knew, they would just call me crazy. You know, to the extent that I'm disclosing things, how much of that registers as crazy? The word crazy is a curse, like with this. And it has been that way since, you know, the conquering of gods, you know, the conquering of the ancient religions, the conquering of paganism, all of that, you know, came in and said, like, no room for the high priestess, like no room for the shaman, no room for the mystic in any meaningful way outside of this little tiny framework where they're allowed to exist. What is the mystic? What is the shaman? Somebody who has an ability to speak the language of the unconscious mind if they learn how to do it. And that's an incredible value to society. If we could stop for 1 minute pointing our fingers and saying crazy, crazy, unconscious motivations. Like, what about the people who can speak the unconscious, who can actually speak that language? Sorry, I'm lecturing the church and they're not even here. So, hi. All right, let's go ahead and get to the hidden strengths. Well, before the hidden strengths, I want to see, like, what does your shadow want from you? Wow, that's interesting right off the bat. Let me get some of these. What does your shadow want from you? This is going to be a long reading. That's fine. That's going to be okay. So it's funny, I don't know this deck by heart yet. Like, usually what I'll do with the deck is, like, I'll learn it really, really well. I'll read what the authors intended, and then I'll consecrate it, you know, for the purpose of doing these readings with it. But this deck has been consecrated, but I didn't get to really learn it the way that I usually like to learn the decks. And so this is purely intuitive, and you know, there's always intuition, but usually I like to have the scaffolding of the intended meanings. So this is just pure intuition. So anybody who's familiar with this deck, like, I'm the Morrigan, which is why it's the Celtic Book of the Dead deck, which is why I grabbed it. But I think I might go off script a little bit with the way that I want to look at this, because, wait, hold on, let me just get a little bit more. A little bit more on this. Because your guides are saying, like, this is a value. And I think that's like, I was kind of rambling in that direction. Like, Spirit was just kind of showing me the Hierophant, the Hierophant, the Hierophant, the Hierophant. Like, this was, as I was speaking, that's why I was kind of yelling at the church that wasn't here. Because the conquering of gods was such an act of, like, how can we, like, when we think about, like, the monotheism, a one true God, you know, in the beginning there was word, aka order, basically. You know, how can we bring order to the chaos of the unconscious mind? Well, you know, there needs to be a dominant narrative, you know, and that's really, like, hierarchy positioning. Like, that's about dominant narrative. Like, we can trace it all the way back to that. When we trace it all the way back to that, you know, this displaces, I just lost the channel, but Spirit is basically saying, like, displaces the truth about who you are, what you have to offer. And right, so it like, to manage the unconscious mind and to try and sort of, like, do that for individuals, and then from, like, a group perspective, is to have some kind of control over the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is the consciousness of God, or consciousness of Gaia. So we're talking about, like, I'm trying really hard to keep it narrow enough so that it's, like, easy to understand, but this is a gift. You have a gift, you have something really valuable. These soldiers here represent two things. One, like, the way in which you guard yourself from this knowledge of difference, and also the way in which you are guarded from this knowledge in yourself, and the value of this, and kind of where it positions you. And so, like, people, and I have to be careful with this because it's like I'm simultaneously trying to disqualify hierarchy while I also let me just look at this because I don't want to get lost. When it comes to the gifts that the desire of your shadow for you is to recognize that the position that this puts you in is a part, but that spirit is carrying you forward, and that you're afraid of exposure. But this is about to, there's you're afraid of exposure, but exposure is kind of also the desire to be seen, known, understood, experienced, to have yourself be taken seriously, to have the wisdom that you have to bring, and that mystic, shaman, creator genes that you were born with, be considered the gift that it is. First there's a call for you. The desire of your shadow is like to please consider like just the value of what I have to offer you and the world. And you are afraid of exposure, but that exposure is also that liberating aspect. And so when we look at this island of recognition and this hole in your story, now Spirit is saying, like, if you're like, this is me, this is the story of my life, I'm on my journey, and here it is. But then we have this big hole, and in the hole lived the monster. And this is the hole that says, your story is not supposed to go like this. You're not allowed to be like this, and this is not acceptable. And so you're going to either have to take a lot of medication that's going to make you feel like you're drowning alive, or you can keep it all secret for the rest of your life and never really share who you are with anyone, and therefore be the leper king who is alienated by their own giftedness and their own self. And so Spirit is saying, rather than have that be the case, part of your giftedness or part of what it means to have this island of recognition is to come into a recognition with yourself that says, I have these beautiful gifts of mysticism and shamanism, and that my powers and my talents are all in the psychic arts, are all in the spiritual arts, are all in developing religious technology, because you speak the language between worlds. You can translate the language between worlds like into a coherent stream of consciousness as part of what your giftedness is. And so part of what it means to be in this island of recognition is to have that bravery that stands up against the world, and instead of holding yourself together all the time to keep it under wraps, like so that nobody can know that you're battling your very natural sight that is confirmed daily 1,000 times if you allow yourself to feel good about it and look at it without fear, right? So basically Spirit is saying, to own this story is to own this black hole in your story, where Spirit is saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one sees it, did it fall? If people are like this and no one ever says anything, do these people even exist? If there was a lot of work that went into making sure that anybody who displayed any of this outside of the confines of acceptable churchiness were burned, or crushed with rocks, very... if you think about the way in which these people were killed for exhibiting certain strengths or abilities or productivities. Now, when we talk about witches being burned, because there's two lines of reasoning around this. One is they were using chamomile to treat insomnia, and that was considered against the church. And so all the things that women knew about nature and how to, against the church, against the order of the hierarchy, which again, let's control the collective unconsciousness. It's kind of deep. But when you think about drowning viciously, you know what I mean, being burned alive viciously, hangings, these were very public displays of do not exhibit these abilities. So the epigenetic conditioning is going to be that anybody who exhibits these abilities is somebody that everyone's afraid of. We don't talk to those people. We don't deal with those people. That's that leper king. It's crazy. It's evil. It's demons. It's possession, or it's mental, again, we can put all kinds of labels on something that is natural, the shaman, natural, the mystic, the art around that, the creating around that. And so Spirit is saying this recognition of like, why are you afraid of yourself? Well, because there has been public displays against your very existence from the beginning of time. And there are asylums for people like you. There's medication that is so detrimental. Like there's so many ways in which, like, you know, for you to bravely confront this, taking all that energy out of like hiding who you are and put that energy into just being who you are, because that's brave in and of itself, is taking, like, having this recognition around your story, and like this monster that exists in your story isn't really so much as a monster, as just a spot that people are not allowed to look at, look into, be near, without the stigma and the punishment related to the stigma being brought to the forefront. Like, you will be punished for being yourself by being this way. And we can look through history and we can see where all of that stuff, you know, how it always like irons itself out. But with the green, the green and burning tree, and oh God, I love this so much. So part of the gift that your shadow wants to bring you is this this recognition for yourself of your own value, you know, of like where it can take you as well, and that Spirit is you know, putting you into a position where you can stop fearing exposure and step into it, you know. So with this, if you look at, like, I don't know, maybe it's the Midrash, it was one of the ancient books, you're going to see there's one of the stories about Moses, that Moses had been walking in the desert and that and came upon the burning bush, and that there's this other aspect of the story with the Moses and the burning bush, which is that the bush had always been burning, but that Moses was the only one who saw it. Everyone else just kind of walked past it. They didn't have the eyes to see. And so this flower growing in the snow is almost like very similar to the burning bush here card. And this idea that, you know, your connection to Spirit and your ability to see what isn't seen by everybody else is a huge blessing. It's like the flower that is supposed to die under the snow, but persists in growth anyway. And so one of the things that your shadow wants is you to realize that this giftedness that has persisted in an environment designed to destroy like any further, you know, development of those genes, you know, destroy like this is an environment that is hostile, dangerous, critical to these gifts. But the burning tree and the burning bush, and like this idea of you being able to see what others can't see, as being something that puts you in a leadership position and not at a detriment, right? Or it should anyway. With the Island of Joy and like the chaos that is your lived experience, and Spirit saying that like the gift that that your shadow wants to give you is dominion over the chaos, you know, in recognizing who you are and the value of who you are, and seeing that this is a gift that grew against all odds, and that it is like Moses seeing the burning bush, but nobody else did. And like, if you can think about, you know, the value of that. And the Island of Joy is like, you know, taking this stance that says, you know, your guides want to, you know, the gift that your shadow wants to give you, and your guides are here with that too, is bring you joy about the power that you hold, and not think of it as something that you have to fear. So let's take a look at your child. So it's important to integrate this shadow. I'm going to look at the hidden strengths real fast. I know your reading is getting long, and I'm a little bit concerned with that, but I'm going to take that deep breath and just like let it be. So the hidden strength is, you know, you're conditioned to see this as a weakness, and I'm telling you that there's joy in seeing it as a strength. The Magic, a card, Alchemy coming out. There's joy in seeing this as a strength. And so Spirit is saying, like, let your gifts expand, you know, and with this clarity, and building from a place of clarity. So the challenge is to, well, I'm not getting the challenges. We're looking at the hidden strengths. The hidden strength is you're having, okay, I'm all over the place with your reading. I'm really nervous about putting this up. I feel like it's going to be, well, I'm just doing it anyway. It's kind of how I am. With the magic coming out and the alchemy coming out, the strength here is that you hold the ability to bring magic into the world in a way that is palpable and confronts, Spirit saying confronts technology to a certain degree. You know, when we think about the power of AI, this is a cool way of putting it. You know, you think about what we're creating with AI is really interesting, and that's a reading to do on its own. But it's like taking the collective consciousness of everything that we put on the internet or whatever they're drawing, you know, whatever that database is, and then being able to have access to this and access to that and access to this at the touch of a button. And Spirit is saying, you know what you are? Your ability to translate the unconscious mind, your ability to interact with these things and sort of like, you know, manage in a way that makes meaning. It's like being able to go into the collective unconscious in the same way that AI grabs information and makes sense of it. You're able to have access to that collective unconscious. And again, it's like, talk about a supercomputer. It like literally confronts the power of technology to be able to come into this giftedness. And I don't know why that's important, but that's coming through. And so like with building and atoms here and clarity, like your ability to see the different dimensions and make sense of them, this is a huge gift. And it provides for a level of expansion, not just of your own understanding, but everyone's understanding. And so the gift that your shadow has to offer you upon embrace and integration is one where you confound with this ability to bring magic into the world in a tangible way. Your expansion is everyone's expansion when you get over the fact of, you know, get over this exposure, this issue with exposure. And with clarity is that you do see clearly the building blocks of everything. You do understand how these things work together, and there's growth. So, you know, there's some really beautiful aspects here with your gift. I want to look at what it means for you to, so those are your hidden strengths, but like to integrate the shadow, and I'm sorry that I'm scattered, like I'm just scattered. This is kind of a hard reading for me to do because I'm just worried about it. But I'm going to keep going anyway. I love that the cards are coming out so clearly because like I'm kind of a mess with this information. Like I have trouble with this myself, I'll be honest with you. I mean, the number of people that see these abilities as a threat, you would be shocked. You would be shocked. And so I understand what this suffocating suppression is all about, and getting all of your spiritual nutrients from places that this suppression card, you know, what's being suppressed means that you are limited to spiritual influences that happen like where there's no discussion, where there's no, you know, like you have to work with this stuff all by yourself. And that gives the unseen a level of influence that there's not much that can be done with it in a negative way, but it's just, there's more for you. And I think that that's sort of what you need to understand more than anything else, is there's more for you than just the unseen realms. When you've relegated all of your honest self and the honesty of who you are and what it means to be you to just the unseen realms, because the seen can't handle it. They don't want to know. You got to hide this stuff. You don't want them to put you away. You know, there's something so profound with all of that. The Master. And here's where we have, you know, the challenge to integrating your shadow is that the obstacles and the difficulties that you face in recognizing and accepting your shadow is that it requires change. It requires change, like, you know, stepping into this mastery, like valuing that inner voice and bringing that inner voice into a place of consciousness. That's not easy. A couple of reasons. One, it's because right now it just belongs to you. You know, there is an othering that occurs, and it's safe in this place where it just belongs to you, and it's safe where your spiritual influences and your spiritual teachers are just all unseen. Like there's a safety in that. But Spirit is saying that you in particular with this change card and beyond illusion and the mind, I love this. I don't even know if you can see this. Change, beyond illusion, and the mind. your inner voice has never been and is not an illusion. Your inner voice with the Master card here is speaking the truth. Speaking the truth about things that you can't know about. Speaking the truth about people's private situations that you could never know on your own. Speaking the truth about places and people and things. The level of the Master just indicates that you've come to a place where your giftedness, where you're like, I know I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody else about it, but I know damn well that there's no maleficent activity here, you know, like that all of the ways in which you're able to that you've gained mastery over this aspect of yourself gives you such power to bring change, and to pull this out of the realm of illusion and out of the realm of something that only happens in your mind and into a place of consciousness for everyone. So it's almost like being yourself is the hardest thing that you can do, but it's also to integrate your gift is to step fully into yourself and fully into who you are and fully into your capacities, and to let anyone who has, you know, misperceptions about that have misperceptions about it. But you don't have to live in a prison of your own mind, because the place for your gift is something that you have to make for yourself in the world and not something that exists for you. And that confidence, you know, comes with this mastery here. So let's take this, let's sort of kind of end this reading here. What I want to do is embrace your shadow. I want to look at embracing your shadow, the gift of integration, and then one last message. So with the tantric journey here, flopping out, this has to do with and passion. And all right, so we've got alchemy on the bottom of the deck again. Like, this is really important. You have magical abilities. Like, every like word out of my mouth with this reading, I'm like, I try to like catch it. Like, it comes out of my mouth, like I channel something and I'm like, no, stop. Like, we don't want to, like, I'm very worried about giving someone advice that says, like, embrace this aspect of yourself, and knowing that there's no infrastructure for that person, there's no place for them to go with that, and that they can say, I'm out of control and I can't handle it, and that's going to be an extreme. 1-800 number, the help helps, but then how do you live, like, you know, in a way that's free and vibrant and vital? I'm really having trouble. I think I've had trouble with all of these shadow work readings just because it's shadow work. It's supposed to be hard. But, you know, I want to tell you to be you, to embrace the mystic, the shaman, and to know that all of your gifts are in the psychic arts, and that that's okay. And that learning how to be yourself is just learning how to be yourself. Everybody has to learn how to be themselves, and everybody has a reckoning of an ordeal trying to learn how to be themselves. Like, you're just one that being yourself is a little bit more of like, it's I'm seeing it's a battle, and I think that's why the Morrigan's here. I wasn't sure why. I didn't know why her presence was so strong in this reading, but the reason why her presence is so strong in this reading is because it's a battle to be you. I'm thinking about I'm being shown the LGBTQ. I'm seeing the whole line of letters, and I've said this before, this has come through before for me, that's like we're missing a letter. You know, we're missing a letter. We're missing the letter for you. You know, it's this neurodivergence along the lines of a synesthesia and a sensitivity to the unseen. It's a beautiful gift of alchemy that you have in order to sort of like speak the language of the unconscious mind and be able to translate it into the conscious mind with consciousness here. Like, that's incredible. You know, the tantric journey with, let me read this. The frequency of the tantric journey helps us to unlock the hidden knowledge and wisdom that we intrinsically hold about how to reach a state of wholeness and completion through our sensual experiences with ourselves and with another. This is interesting because we're taking this out of the mind. Like, with passion and solar plexus chakra coming out together like this, I'm seeing flames, and you stepping into your power about what lights you up. Again, you're going to have your talents are all bunched in the psychic arts. you're denying yourself the sensual experience of life. Because like when we think about our all of our senses, right? Spirit is showing me we all have different, like we all have the senses that we have. You have an extra sense, and you're denying yourself the full sensory experience of like what it is to be you, because that sense is not allowed. That sense is taboo. That sense is demonic. That sense is illusions and delusions, and it's not. It's the unconscious mind, and learning how to speak the language of the unconscious mind is how you're able to get control over this particular gift. And that's an incredible power. And so Spirit's saying that's almost kind of what we're talking about here in terms of this acceptance and this integrating. You know, being able to integrate this gift is being able to operate from all of your senses fully. That's being you fully, and that's stepping into your power and operating out of your passions in a way that, again, you're the translator that brings this alchemy about translating the unconscious mind into consciousness. So this change that we're looking at and this integrating is about stepping into power and going full speed ahead with this passion, and feeling like it's okay to use all of your senses, that all of the senses that you have are for use. And if it feels like it's just scary or unruly and there's no place for me and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this and I just have to, you know, keep it quiet. And Spirit is basically saying that the change here is, no, you don't. No, you don't. If you're watching this reading and it's resonating really hard and you're like, I don't know how to handle any of this stuff. I just, you know, if you're having to compartmentalize, like, here's where I live and then that's the normal world. And I can be normal in the normal world, but I have to live over here in silence. Like, it's difficult, but it's also, yeah, but this is your, yes, Spirit says like to integrate this, you have, okay, let's take a look. Magical child speaks to like you're born with this gift. This is who you are. You know, again, it's coming into a place of acceptance. For a really long time, I think with the tantric journey, like we can look at the letters again. You know, we're missing a letter. You know, we're missing a type of divergence that, you know, is a type of being in the world and expressing, you know, as a whole self that's just not allowed. And so Spirit is bringing this back, you know, into focus to say, like, think about all the other things. You know, people who had attraction to the same sex, like telling themselves, I can't ever have a relationship when it wasn't, you know, back in the 1950s. I'll just be alone all my life. I won't interact with that sense of how I am and what it is to be me. And like, because it's not allowed, it's taboo, it's wrong. I'm like coming back to that because Spirit is showing me that, you know, how you are, your abilities is very much you. You know, you're born like that. And, you know, this romantic charm and potential for power and where this can go wrong is by being open about this. You are gonna have people who are like, it's just self-aggrandizement. You know, that's all that it is. But this is your job. You know, I get the sense that if this is your level of giftedness, shaman, mystic, creator, creation, you know, like all of this, you're going to have to live with the fact that the people that don't have these abilities and can't conceive of how anybody could have them are going to call it all kinds of things. Self-aggrandizement, you know, like gross in a way. Like people see it as a power that's like, you know, evil or gross or somehow like bashes boundaries or, you know, breaks privacy laws. Like there's a bigger system at play that keeps all of that stuff from happening, but no one understands that unless they already can do this. And so what we have here with you being able to understand that this is, for people, this is a romanticism. You know what I mean? It's an aggrandizement. It exists in fiction and movies and TV, so you can't have this. And if you try to have this, like it's wrong because it's not allowed, or it's wrong because it makes you special, or it's wrong because all of the different things that are coming up here as, you know, I speak, have to do with like, you know, orphaning you. Like keeping you somewhere where you can't exist with like the full range of like what you are. And so it is risky for you to do anything but practice your art silently. For you to practice your art in a way that's professional is a huge risk. And that's just because of the way that the world is set up right now. But it's changing. That's something that's changing. And you're a part of that change. And so this last thing that we're going to grab is your shadow's message to you. And I'm going to grab it from over here. And then we can close out this reading, because if you're gifted in this way, you've already been managing this all of your life. And if you've been managing it all of your life, you're on some tightrope between worlds. And this is a negotiation. This is a figuring it out. You know, the change that's coming in, allowing you to just fully step into who you are and what you're able to do. Let me just get this. Spirit is basically saying, it's time to let go of everyone who would keep you small, everyone who has a problem with this, everyone who, like, let go of gossip, let go of all of it. Because none of those, at the end of the day, on your last, like, you know, with your dying breath, you're not going to care about the nameless people and all of their judgments of you and like what they can and cannot figure out. You know, you have the power to remove every obstacle, you know, to know that nothing about your experience and who you are and what you're gifted with is wasted. And you are meant to take this leap of faith, being open about this. And with act as if, you know, the chameleon spirit, again, this is a animal that is able to take on the color. And I think when we look at some of what it is to be able to interact with energies, if you're someone who can channel, you can also shapeshift. Both, same, it's exact. And so, you know, that you don't understand what your gift is or how it works means that you are going to be channeling the energy of people who do understand how it works to a certain extent. Like, there isn't a real mentorship program. So if you find yourself being a little bit of a chameleon in terms of how to practice your art, how to be you, how to negotiate with these things, it's because you're channeling the energies of people that sort of understand what they're doing, to the extent that you can kind of like work with it. But you have to take it a step beyond that. You know, if you find that you're like dry right now with how you practice your art or your psychic abilities, or if you hit some level of an impasse, it's because all you've been able to do with the ability. Now, the ability to channel people who've figured out these gifts, whether it's like somebody that, you know, a spiritual leader, or it's somebody from another time period, doesn't really matter. Like, whatever you're channeling, you know, ancestors, like, it does, like, that to you should be your signal. Like, if you can channel, then you know that you've already got the gift to work with. It's already your gift. It's not a gift coming from someplace else. It's your own gift. Now, with the chameleon, you know, it's like you can take on different influences, like, and channel them, like, quite literally, you know, to sort of like get a hold of like what it is that you're dealing with. But you need to take it one step farther than that. You know, the act as if is like saying, you know, it's not just okay to change colors in the corner and, you know, and sample this stuff as other people have sort of interacted with it. And that's a good idea. Like this whole concept of a guru and following a guru is like sampling, you know, what they're offering you in the way of teaching, and then like interacting with it and either teaching it yourself or displaying it, whatever. There's a chameleon, there's a shape-shifting, there's a bringing into yourself and then expressing out. You need to take that even farther. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, if you feel sort of like where you need to take a leap of faith, where you need to sort of break through, or where you're at a stagnancy with your giftedness, it's because you've gotten as much as you can get from other people and channeling other people, other information, whatever. And now you need to do your own creating. And what has kept you from your own creating, again, is fear of this stuff. But this is an art form. It's a mode of expression. So like with the shaman, the mystic, and the creator, the psychic arts is an art. Like, think of it as an art form. Think of yourself as having no barriers to participating in that art form. But then understand that you need to take your influences in combination with your creative capacity, and you need to create of your own unction, of your own emanation, of your own imagination. and the fearlessness that you can bring into that. So so yes, act as if nothing's wasted about your learning process. You know, you have to overcome every obstacle to this that is put before you. And one of those obstacles is there are no teachers, you know, but you see clearly now, you know, and so your shadow is saying it's time to make use of this gift in a way that there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing wrong with you. This needs to be managed in a way that is comfortable for you, and that's going to take a little bit of a learning process, a little bit of a learning curve. But there's nothing to be afraid of, and certainly there's nothing to be like where you have to be afraid of yourself. I'm going to try to get some numbers to put in the box below, like, you know, if you find that you're at like that you really don't know how to deal with this, like, because there's co-create from Spirit wants to come out. There's not much I can do besides me showing up and doing these readings and working with you in this way. The one-on-one readings like can be okay for that, but I can't do those readings at a discount or for free because they put me in, I have to sleep for hours and hours before and after. But I'm going to try my best to continue to provide at least the resource of myself in terms of putting up readings and I'm developing like courses. I'm doing everything and it just takes me forever, you know? So pile number 3, this was the hardest one out of all the shadow work. This was the toughest one, I think, because I struggle with this stuff too. Yeah, it's really difficult. It is, but it's also incredible. It's an incredible giftedness. And there's change happening right now. And I encourage you to allow yourself to step into greater expression. Like, you can be bold. You know, there's something to be said for operating with this gift all by yourself. Means that like you're going to struggle with all the influences that are sort of at the bottom, you know, like if we think about this as you being between two worlds, and this is all the way at the bottom of this impasse are these influences that you're having to figure out, like, you know, good and evil, right and wrong. The truth is the 4th and the 5th dimension, but like the 4th dimension, like in particular, is what we're talking about with like the, you know, most of what we see in the unseen realm is in the 4th dimension. And this is all dimensions, you know, so this is a chaotic dimension. I don't know if anybody like, so, you know, to any fear you might have, you are this main ingredient. So if you're carrying fear in your body and that's something that you are projecting out in your perception, it's going to manifest in some kind of a way. A lot of times, you know, that'll happen for you to figure out how to overcome it, you know, how to get a hold of it. You know, I think one of the values of this gift for me is every single time I had to deal with these things and find a workaround, or how do I, like, you know, make this work for me? I don't hate it in myself because of all, like, it self-confirms as a valid thing. And I think that Spirit would, you know, ask Spirit to help you with that too. Say, Spirit, like, let these gifts and what I'm seeing, you know, confirm in a way where, like, I find it tangibly manageable and, like, you know, grounded, you know, 3D level. But the part of you that brings opposition, it's like expressing and then reacting. So the 4th dimension it seems scary. It can be out of control. Oh my God, what do I do? It's chaotic. It's dark. It's darkness. It's not evil. It is chaotic. You're dealing with so many different dimensions that there's nothing to hang your hat on. And part of what it means to, like, understand that and work with that, nothing is fixed in the 4th dimension. So if you're expecting it to act like the 3rd dimension, you can get really scared. It can be really scary if you expect that dimension to act like this one. And so to the extent that this might be scary to you, and that might be one of these reasons why you, like, you know, I really need to get a hold of this. I don't know what to do. I can't tell anybody. If I tell someone, they're going to say I'm crazy. They're going to want to put me away. They're going to want to medicate me. Like, I happen to know that it's real because of all of these things. It's chaotic. It's difficult, but you can manage it from the inside out. And I guess I'm just telling you that because I do it, but also because there's a place and a value for the art that can be created from this space and these abilities are very valuable. And so I encourage you to keep working with this. And I encourage you to, you know, to the extent that it can be scary, it's because that dimension doesn't work like this one. There's nothing to be afraid of. You know, these are just opportunities for you to gain dominion over some of this stuff. So pile number 3, I'm going to leave it there. We are clocking in at like an hour and a half here with this reading. Like, I want to keep rambling only because I'm worried that this is going to be one of these readings I posted. I'm worried about it. But stay optimistic and be true to yourself and be grateful because Spirit is saying, you know, wherever you are, I'm right here with you. Whatever you're struggling with, I'm going to find a way to get that message to you that you need. You know, the faith in technomancy is knowing that your guides have a way to get messages to you. Letting go of trying to focusing your attention on things you cannot control. You can't control who you are. There's a lot of control that you have within, like, how you manage who you are, but you trying to control who you are, like, to a degree where you don't, like, you're not loving yourself, you're not valuing what you have to offer. Spirit says, be true to yourself. You know, that's where the joy is going to come back into your life, when you allow yourself to be true to yourself and be optimistic about what it is to express in fullness. So pile number 3, I'm going to leave it there. I'm worried about this reading. I hope that this was helpful. I'll be back soon. And it's such an honor to do your readings.